My parents liked my twin sister more than me. They spent all the money they were saving for my wedding on her. So I stopped talking to them after saying no to my mom's selfish request. I'm 23 years old and have a twin sister named Allison. We don't get along. Actually, we don't even talk. The same goes for my parents. We used to talk even though they didn't treat me well. But for the past 2 years, I've stayed away from them, and they haven't tried to contact me until now. Allison is 12 minutes older than me, so she's automatically the favorite because she's older. My parents only wanted one child because that's what they had planned for, and they couldn't afford to raise two. But when they found out they were having twins, it was too late to change their plans, and Mom didn't want to take any risks. I learned about this when I was in high school from my uncle, who was drunk at a Thanksgiving party. That was the day I gave up trying to make my parents like me. In those circumstances, they did the most typical thing. They had 2 children but chose to only love one, which happened to be Allison, not me. Since we were kids, the competition between me and Allison was intense. Whatever she did, I tried to do better just to get our parents' approval, but it only made them dislike me more for outshining their favorite. Honestly, Allison wasn't even that interested in being better than me. She just wanted people to praise her, so she pretended to care about our competition. I have to admit, she was skilled at manipulation, making people believe she was genuinely hurt when I outdid her. This resulted in many people validating her and putting me down to make her feel better. These people included my parents, some relatives, and even some classmates from high school. So in the end, I got good grades and participated in many activities to outshine my sister, while she received attention, validation, and sympathy from my parents and others because I was seen as the bad guy for overshadowing her. Looking back, I wouldn't change my achievements, but I do wish I had rubbed them in her face more. Then 2 years ago, we turned 21 and had both graduated. She graduated from a regular college, while I graduated from one of the top business schools in the state. Not only that, I was the valedictorian and had received a scholarship, which saved my parents a lot of money on my education. You might think I'm crazy, but I actually hoped my parents would be happy for me. Instead, they focused all their attention on Allison and her uncertain future because she had barely passed her studies. Both of us had moved back home, but while I was already working as an intern from home, Allison was struggling to find a job and facing rejection after rejection. My parents were more concerned about her, barely acknowledging my achievements or congratulating me. I wasn't surprised, but I was definitely disappointed. I tried to hide my feelings because I was still living with them and hadn't saved enough to move out yet, so I kept quiet about how hurt I was. But after our 21st birthday, I couldn't take it anymore. I expected them to do something special for us, but the day before our birthday, I found out they had all gone to the beach with Allison and her friends, leaving me alone at home with just a note and a $50 gift card. I felt utterly shattered. They had taken Allison on a beach trip while I got nothing but a brief note and a small gift. Many things have been unfair in my childhood, but this was the last straw. It was so disappointing and heartless that I decided to move out that very day and never look back. I had a few friends who offered to let me stay with them until I could find my own place, which wouldn't take long because the company I was interning at was likely going to hire me after the internship. So I only needed a place to stay for a maximum of 2 months. I packed my things and moved in with a friend without telling my parents or sister, and I haven't looked back since. They didn't miss me enough to ask me to come back. They did call me the day after I moved out, but not to wish me a happy birthday. They wanted to inform me that they'd be back soon and mentioned that I should probably fix the leaky tap. I told them I had moved out, hoping for some kind of reaction, but there was none. My parents seemed fine with it, and Allison didn't care. That was the last meaningful conversation I had with my family. Since then, I haven't visited them, and they haven't reached out to me either. Occasionally, I'd hear about Allison from my friends, but that was the extent of my knowledge about her life. They were unaware of my parents, and my parents knew little about me. Over the past 2 years, I've worked hard and now have my own place. It's not extravagant, but it's a comfortable apartment in a good neighborhood. The rent is manageable with my income, which is quite an achievement considering the struggles many people my age face. I'm content with how my life has unfolded, and I've made a conscious effort to keep thoughts of my family at bay. I recently learned that Allison got married to a businessman much older than her and is now enjoying life in California. I thought everything was fine with my family until 2 days ago when my uncle called, informing me that my parents had been in a serious car accident and wanted to see me urgently. I hurried to the hospital as soon as I could because, despite everything, I'm not heartless. When I arrived, I learned that they had already been there for a couple of days, recovering from their injuries. Their car had been hit by a truck, and although they survived, they were seriously hurt. Unfortunately, they didn't have health insurance because my dad believed in self-sufficiency and thought we wouldn't need hospital care. It's one of the most absurd beliefs I've ever encountered. They had initially reached out to my sister, but she refused to come back or assist them. She felt it was inappropriate for our parents to ask for financial help from her wealthy husbands so soon after her wedding. She didn't want to appear like a gold digger to her spouse. She refused to return because she felt she couldn't abandon her home and her 2 stepchildren, who weren't biologically hers, but her husband's from a previous marriage. She was busy playing the role of a happy family with her husband's relatives, neglecting her own parents in the hospital after a severe car accident. Even as she wanted to help with the bills, she couldn't afford to, as she was solely dependent on her husband. It was a harsh reality check, shattering the illusion of being the favored daughter and the golden child. I was shocked that they hadn't even bothered to contact me first. When my uncle mentioned that my parents now expected me to cover their medical expenses, I was furious. The amount was substantial, and it would take me a long time to recover financially. I hesitated to spend so much, especially on people who had never shown me any love or care throughout my life. I knew they had other family members who could take care of them, and even if I didn't pay, someone else would step in. It's just that it would be more embarrassing for them to borrow money from others, and they'll likely have to repay it much sooner than they would have to repay me. They explained this while asking me to cover the bills and even promised a quick repayment. So I'm torn. I can either refuse to pay, saving myself from humiliation, or I can cover their expenses, sacrificing my own money and waiting for reimbursement. Honestly, I'm not inclined to help them at all. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and our relationship has been strained for as long as I can remember. They feel like strangers to me now, so I don't feel compelled to assist them. But then again, if I don't help, I'm no better than Allison, which is disheartening. So I'm unsure what to do. Update 1. Hi there, I've made the tough decision not to assist my parents. It wasn't easy, but I'm confident their medical expenses will be covered by other means. They only reached out to me because they were too proud to ask other relatives for help. I haven't informed them of my decision yet. How do you even begin to tell your family you won't be assisting with their medical bills after a serious accident? It's been nearly 5 days since I last saw them, and after reflecting on the comments, I realized I was still unconsciously competing with Allison. Seeing that she didn't offer assistance to our parents, I felt compelled to prove I was the better daughter. I suppose I'll always have that competitive streak, no matter how hard I try. It's become a part of who I am. Many comments rightfully criticized my parents' lack of health insurance, and I couldn't agree more. My father's decision to forego insurance, thinking he was a flawless driver, was incredibly foolish. If I had been involved in their lives, I would have insisted on insurance. He didn't even insure his car, which adds to the recklessness of his choices. They're fortunate that the accident was the truck driver's fault. Otherwise, they'd be responsible for covering the car repairs as well. As for their financial situation, which many of you inquired about, I'd say my parents are comfortable. They're neither wealthy nor struggling. My dad holds a managerial position in his company, and my mom works in HR at a smaller firm. Together, their income is sufficient, especially now that they no longer have to support me or Allison. While growing up, we never faced financial stress, but we also couldn't live extravagantly. We were solidly middle class, and that hasn't changed. I can't understand why my parents wouldn't be able to cover their own medical bills. If they can borrow money with the promise of repayment, they should be able to manage their expenses themselves. They haven't explained the reason to me, and I doubt I'll find out anytime soon. Update 2. I finally mustered the courage to inform my parents that I wouldn't be assisting with their expenses. They had been calling me persistently for the past week, and yesterday I realized I couldn't keep ignoring them until they were discharged from the hospital. So I answered their calls and explained my decision. As expected, they didn't react well. My mom unleashed her anger on me, despite her broken ribs, accusing me of being ungrateful, among other things. My dad simply disowned me and hung up after my mom finished berating me. Surprisingly, their reaction didn't hurt as much as I anticipated. I realized I hadn't felt loved by them in a long time. They hadn't made any effort to contact me or check on me for 2 years after I moved out following their neglect on an important birthday. So I've never really had parents anyway. I'll just continue living my life as I have been for the past 2 years, and even before that. Their reaction doesn't affect me as much as they thought it would. After the call with my parents, my uncle called to give me an earful, but I hung up after a few seconds because I didn't need that negativity from others. Whatever they think of me doesn't matter anymore. My uncle later texted me, informing me that my parents had decided to use the money from the fund they had set aside for our wedding, now that they were in need. They had already used more than half of the wedding fund for Allison's wedding, and whatever was left they spent on a trip to Europe. This left them with little savings, explaining why they couldn't cover their own expenses. So that mystery was solved. My uncle may have intended to make me feel guilty, but instead I felt relieved that I hadn't contributed my hard-earned money to my parents' bills. Their irresponsible spending was their own doing, not mine. Their lack of insurance due to their delusional beliefs wasn't my responsibility either. They could turn to their relatives for help or fend for themselves. I wasn't giving them anything. They were no longer entitled to my time or my money. Update 3. Something really strange happened today, and I need to talk about it. I haven't been able to confide in my friends because most of them don't know much about my family history, and I'm not ready to share it with them yet. So I'm turning to Reddit for support. It's been almost 2 weeks since I last spoke to my parents. A few hours ago in the evening, Allison unexpectedly showed up at my doorstep. I was taken aback by her sudden visit, especially because I didn't think she knew where I lived. It turns out one of our old high school friends disclosed the neighborhood I lived in, and Allison went to great lengths to locate me, which was surprising given our strained relationship. She also looks and acts very differently from what I remembered. She's become more refined and sophisticated, I think, and that's been a huge difference because earlier she used to talk like she was still in high school. But now she sounds more laddie-like somehow and even behaves better. Her way of dressing has changed, the jewelry she wears has changed, and even her makeup. It actually felt like I wasn't even talking to Allison today. Everything about her is aged all of a sudden, but one thing that hasn't changed is how she is a person. I guess you cannot put makeup on your heart and tell people to call it Mrs. Davis, like she did with herself. Her personality and beliefs haven't undergone any renovation for sure. I let her in after she knocked at my door, and I was really surprised to see her, but I was also curious to know why she'd come by, so I decided to talk to her. After some small talk about her life, where she told me everything that she'd been up to unprompted and bragged about how fabulous her life was as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers married to a wealthy guy without anything to worry about except for her cuticles. I waited for her to get to the point while politely nodding at her boring speech about how wonderfully underrated being a traditional housewife was. She was even advising me to do the same, so I really couldn't wait for her to finish talking about irrelevant things and get to the damn point, which she did after about 15 minutes of talking about her life. She explained that she had returned on her own initiative because our parents had been pleading for her to visit them after the accident. They didn't ask for her financial assistance, but simply wanted her presence. After 2 weeks, she finally decided to come back and thought it was also an opportunity to reconcile with me. However, things took a turn when she began venting about our parents' neediness and how they were disrespecting her new family. She complained about having to leave her 2 children with their nanny just to visit them, expressing frustration at being forced to choose between her parents and her own kids. I couldn't comprehend why she kept referring to her stepchildren as her own. She divulged a lot about her marriage and her husband, unsolicited. From what I gathered, it seemed like her husband had only married her to improve his chances of gaining partial custody of his children, which he successfully achieved. She believed he genuinely cared for her. He had been embroiled in a custody battle for some time, being a busy businessman unable to dedicate enough time to his children. His ex-wife used this against him until he announced his engagement, signaling stability, which swayed the court in his favor. Allison proudly recounted how she had stepped in to save these children, but to me, it seemed like her husband had manipulated her. Their relationship had barely lasted a year before he proposed, indicating that his motives might not have been purely romantic. It's unlikely that genuine love blossoms so quickly, especially after a divorce. Perhaps Allison was oblivious to this or chose to overlook it for financial security, content with being a glorified nanny to her husband's children. Furthermore, she resented her own parents for expecting her presence after their serious accident, feeling it encroached on her time with her new family. Her new family, however, comprised a husband who may not have held much affection for her and two unrelated children who were just as content with their nanny as they were with her. If there ever was a picture-perfect definition of ungratefulness, it would be embodied by Allison. Though I'm no champion of my parents, hearing her complain about their alleged neediness left me astounded. It was hard to believe that this was the same girl they had favored repeatedly over me. Eventually, she got to the purpose of her visit and informed me she would depart in 2 days. Despite promising our parents she would stay for a month, she felt exhausted from their repetitive recounting of the accident and their ordeal, claiming she needed to return home soon. Now, she expected me to reconcile with our parents and essentially take her place, relieving her of the guilt of abandoning them in their time of need. Unaware that our parents had severed ties with me once again due to my refusal to cover their expenses, she likely assumed they hadn't mentioned it to her, as they rarely talk about me. She sought sympathy from me for having to deal with our parents and leaving her own family behind. Her plan was to leverage this sympathy to manipulate me into becoming our parents' emotional support, as she didn't feel capable of fulfilling that role herself. It was a classic tactic of Allison's, but I saw through it and refused to play along. I had no intention of revealing this to her during her stay at my house, knowing it would lead to conflict. Instead, I gave her a vague assurance that I would try to reconcile, though I knew I had no intention of doing so. She left after urging me to stay in touch, though we both knew she didn't mean it. Frankly, I was relieved to see her go. Not only was she a self-centered and manipulative individual, but she was also dreadfully dull to converse with. Her monotonous tales of life in California left little room for meaningful dialogue. Her life seems to revolve around parties, her stepchildren, and her husband. While she believes she's living the dream, I find it rather pitiful. It's evident that her husband's affection is lacking, and with her stepchildren spending significant time with their biological mother, it's likely they'll always favor her. Yet this is the path she has chosen, and as for me, I'm determined to create a life far removed from my family. Today reaffirmed my decision to distance myself from my parents and sister. They're selfish and callous, with little regard for anyone but themselves, especially Allison. It's disheartening to be associated with such individuals. However, I finally cut ties with all of them, blocking their contacts to ensure my peace of mind. I hope they respect my boundaries and refrain from contacting me in the future. I'm better off without them, and I pray it stays that way.
On the day my husband, Robert, left for a business trip, I discovered it was actually a getaway with his mistress. For years, I had been supporting him selflessly, telling myself it was okay because he was busy providing for the family, even if he was indifferent to child-rearing and household chores. But it was all a lie. All those late nights and business trips were for his mistress. He had been deceiving our family, playing alone all this time. How could I have been fooled for 10 years? I collapsed in tears, overwhelmed by sorrow, and my son, Thomas, gently patted my back. Mom, don't cry. Leave it to me. He smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes, as if he had a plan. Thomas is a genius with an IQ of 200. He comes up with ideas and plans that I, an ordinary person, could never imagine. I decided to let the strategist his plan and execute a revenge drama. When I heard his plan, I was terrified. But the crime of deceiving me all these years was grave. Thinking of confronting the person who made me unhappy made my fears and worries naturally disappear. Robert and his mistress would have to atone for their sins. Unaware, he would return home to screams. Just imagining it made me smile. I couldn't wait for this revenge drama to unfold. My name is Susan. I'm 40 years old and work part-time. I started dating Robert in college, and we eventually got married. Now, we live with our 15-year-old son, Thomas. When Thomas was born, I thought Robert and I would cooperate in raising him and doing housework together. But reality was far from that. As a salesperson, Robert prioritized work over home. Even when I was sick, he would just say, "Hang in there," and head off to work. And he never came home early. If work was busy, he would stay late, leaving me and our child alone. I felt sad and longed for him to empathize with my feelings. But I couldn't voice such selfish desires. I had decided to quit my job to raise Thomas at home instead of sending him to a daycare center. With our income reduced, Robert felt compelled to work harder to earn money. He never complained about my selfishness, and despite his awkwardness, he was kind. "Today, I'll be working late again, so I'll grab dinner outside." "All right, do your best." Lately, our conversations were limited to a few words in the morning. "Is Dad not coming home today either?" "Yes, because he needs to earn a living for us, Thomas. You should appreciate that." I said it to him, but it was really directed at myself too. And when he came home late at night, Robert, quite drunk, would wake me up. "Hey, I'm back." "Oh, welcome home." He always woke me up even though I was asleep and would say the same thing. "Hurry up and prepare the shower for me." I wished he would prepare it himself and quietly take a shower. But since he was supporting us, I couldn't complain. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I prepared the shower and picked up his scattered suit to clean off the dust. After he finished his shower, I had to clean the shower room, of course. So, I waited in the living room for him to finish and come out. "I'm done. I'm going to bed." "Good night." After finishing his own tasks, he went to the bedroom without waiting for me. Even though it was the same bedroom, I had a rule to never disturb Robert's sleep. No light leaking from the hallway, no sound of footsteps or creaking floorboards. On nights when it took a bit longer to clean the shower room, I would give up going to the bedroom and sleep on the living room sofa. In the morning, Thomas, who was usually late to wake up, would find me. "Mom, why are you sleeping here?" "Oh, wait, is it that time already?" Panicked, I got up, thinking I had overslept. But when I checked the time, it was still early. "It's okay, you can go back to sleep. I just happened to wake up early today. I thought I'd study in my room, but decided to do it in the living room to refresh myself." "Oh, you don't need to study that hard, Thomas. You're already doing great." Thomas had always been smart since he was a child. He was curious about many things and read a lot of books, always scoring perfect marks on tests. His teachers said it would be a waste for him to go to a local junior high and recommended highly ranked preparatory schools. Curious about how gifted Thomas was, I once had him take an IQ test. The result was an astonishing IQ of 200. By the way, I took the test with him and barely reached an IQ of 100. This alone made me realize how exceptional he was. "Thomas, if you're interested, Why don't you try enrolling in a prep school? I think I'm good. I'd prefer a junior high close to home. Commuting by bus would mean early mornings and dealing with rush hour. I'd rather get plenty of sleep. He didn't seem motivated, so he didn't enroll in a prep school. While I could appreciate Thomas's brilliance because I had taken my own IQ test, Robert didn't seem particularly interested. When I told him that Thomas had an IQ of 200, his response was a single, dismissive line. "Oh, I see." There was no fuss, just a calm acknowledgement. It was either that he didn't understand the significance compared to his own IQ or he genuinely wasn't interested, likely the latter. Since then, he hasn't shown much interest in Thomas, even up to now. It turns out that there was a reason he woke up early to study. I actually have a dream now. I've found a high school I want to attend. There's a meeting with the teacher coming up, and I wanted to tell Dad about it before then. That's why I thought I'd study until he wakes up. I see. I'm sure he will support you no matter which high school you choose. I encouraged Thomas. As we were talking, Robert woke up. Oh, Dad, good morning. I have something I want to discuss with you before the meeting with my teacher. Huh? A meeting with your teacher? Mom will go for that, so tell her. Robert showed no interest in his son's plans. I know you're busy, but this is important for Thomas's future, isn't it? I always see how he is doing, but you're often too busy to get involved. This is the time you need to be there. What? No, it's fine. I'll support Thomas in whatever high school he wants to attend. Do your best. Despite saying he'd support him, he didn't even ask the name of the school. Yawning, he responded with a dismissive nod. By the way, I'll be on a business trip for a week starting the day after tomorrow. You're saying that like it's not important. Prioritizing his schedule over Thomas's significant decision must have shocked Thomas. Without realizing his insensitivity, Robert continued to complain. And spending a week with the boss, man, that's really unlucky. I have to entertain clients and keep the boss happy, what a drag. He sighed and complained, seeking sympathy for his upcoming business trip. After venting, Robert left for work, seemingly satisfied. I then tried to comfort Thomas. Maybe he was just too busy to talk about it now. Let's try discussing it again when he gets back from the trip. No, Mom. I'd like you to come to the meeting with the teacher. Thomas had given up expecting anything from Robert. It was heartbreaking to realize that as father and son, they couldn't even talk or ask for help from each other. Looking at his defeated expression, I apologized. I'm so sorry, Thomas. If only I had been more assertive with Dad. It's not your fault, Mom. Don't worry about it. After that, there were a few days without much interaction between Robert and Thomas before the day of the business trip finally arrived. Well, take care of the house. That was all Robert said before leaving early in the morning. A few hours later, Thomas woke up and noticed something. Hey, isn't this Dad's hotel ticket for today? Thomas came over to me with an envelope. It had apparently fallen into a gap under the hallway shelf. When I checked, it turned out to be a hotel reservation. Oh no, this is bad. Without this, Dad and his boss will be in trouble. I decided to check the contents of the envelope to make sure the ticket was actually inside. Perhaps he had just left an empty envelope behind. I opened it and pulled out a piece of paper, reading the words aloud. 10th anniversary trip with Lisa. What? There were no hotel tickets inside the envelope, only a detailed schedule for the week, hinting at the presence of another woman. Though I was deeply shocked, I hoped it was some kind of mistake, and called Robert's office. "Hello, this is Robert's wife. Is my husband on a business trip today?" The receptionist, sounding confused, told me that Robert had taken a week of paid vacation. As soon as I hung up the phone, I knew for certain that Robert was having an affair, and my mind was in turmoil. 10 years. I've been deceived for 10 years. No matter how selfish or unreasonable Robert had been, I always forgave him because I believed he was working hard for Thomas and me. I thought Robert was just awkward but still cared for and loved his family. Finding out about Robert's betrayal brought me immense pain and sorrow. As I sat down and cried, Thomas gently patted my back. "Mom, what do you want to do about Dad? Would you forgive him if he cut ties with this Lisa person?" "That's impossible. It's been 10 years. I can't forgive him." As I muttered this, Thomas said, "Then leave it to me." When I looked up at Thomas, I saw an expression I couldn't quite decipher, but he smiled. Somehow, he also looked incredibly reliable. Before I knew it, I was asking Thomas for help. "Thomas, please. With your intelligence, you can teach Dad a lesson." Thomas immediately sprang into action. I realized that while I had an exceptional son on my side, Robert had unwittingly made an extraordinary enemy. Robert, enjoying a trip with his lover under the pretense of a business trip, was completely oblivious. I smiled with satisfaction, eagerly anticipating the day of reckoning. When Robert returned, his face was glowing, but he started pretending to be exhausted from the trip. "I'm so tired," he said, beginning his act of having had a difficult business trip. "I really don't want to go on any more business trips. Why did my first trip to Seattle have to be with my boss?" "Welcome back," I replied, maintaining the usual normalcy in my interactions with Robert. Confronting him now would be no fun. Thomas and I planned to execute our revenge gradually. A few days later, it was just another typical weekday. Robert prepared for work with evident irritation. As he left, Thomas and I exchanged knowing glances and nodded to each other. That evening, Thomas returned from school. "I'm home." "Mom, what happened? You're badly hurt. And who is this?" "Oh, I just happened to be passing by and saw your son fall pretty badly. I thought I should bring him home," said the woman with him. Thomas discreetly gave me a thumbs up, signaling that the plan was going smoothly. This woman was undoubtedly Robert's lover, Lisa. "Thank you so much. Please, come in. I'd like to properly thank you," I insisted, somewhat forcefully bringing Lisa into the house. Thomas and I started some small talk. "I just bought a cake. Please have some." "Thank you. This is a lovely home," Lisa remarked. From this comment, it was clear that she had no idea this was Robert's house, nor did she recognize our faces. I continued the conversation as planned. "My husband worked hard to get a loan and buy this house. I love it, but he seems to dislike being here lately and often goes out." "Really? If this were my home, I'd never want to leave." "Does your husband enjoy going out that much?" Lisa had conveniently opened the door for me to turn the conversation in our favor. Seizing the opportunity, Thomas said, "Yeah, it seems that way. Would you like to see a picture of him?" He showed Lisa a photo of Robert. She looked surprised and a bit shaken but quickly responded, "He looks like a wonderful dad." After saying this, she took a sip of her tea, but her hand trembled slightly. She had finally realized that she was now in the company of Robert's wife and son. Taking advantage of the situation, she seemed to hatch a devious plan. You mentioned that your husband often goes out, right? As a wife, don't you feel lonely being left alone like that? And Thomas, you must be sad that you don't get to play with your dad. Well, yes. He's always working late, and we haven't talked much recently. I replied, hinting at the strained relationship between Robert and me. Lisa seized the opportunity and raised her voice. Wait, you don't even talk? I can't believe it. If I were you, I'd be so lonely I'd divorce him. Are you really okay with this life? She clearly wanted to drive a wedge between us and push for a divorce. She was attacking boldly. You're so beautiful. You'd find a great guy right away if you divorced him. Wouldn't it be wonderful to start a new chapter in your life? She was trying to steer me towards initiating a divorce. I decided to show her that life doesn't always go as planned. Isn't that because you want to marry Robert? I said directly, without beating around the bush. Lisa's smile instantly vanished, and she turned pale, not expecting to be caught. What are you talking about? I don't know your husband at all. Last week, meet at the bus terminal at 9 a.m. Then drive to the airport. By noon, visit tourist spots and a popular cafe. Thomas began reciting the itinerary Robert had planned. Lisa started sweating profusely, but she continued to feign ignorance. What is that? Is that a travel plan or something? She still refused to admit anything, trying to play dumb. Thomas, sensing her stubbornness, decided to provoke her further. What do you think this schedule is? Seems like a fun travel plan to me. Lisa replied, still playing dumb. But her time was running out. Thomas's next statement would force her hand. Actually, this schedule was from a trip Dad and Mom took a year ago. Dad dug it out while organizing his papers and was reminiscing about it. What? Lisa, unable to contain her anger, shouted, her face twisted in confusion and fury. Just as Thomas had predicted. Lisa, being proud and arrogant, despised hand-me-downs. Knowing that the trip Robert planned for their anniversary was a recycled itinerary from a trip with me drove her into a rage. Unable to control her emotions, she put herself in an overwhelmingly unfavorable position. Is that true? I can't believe Lisa let slip her true feelings in her anger, then immediately turned pale as she realized her mistake. Thomas and I exchanged a small fist bump, knowing we had caught her. It's true. Is something wrong? Oh, no, nothing. I just remembered I have another appointment. That excuse is a bit too obvious, don't you think? Thomas and I pressed on, cornering Lisa. She seemed to be frantically searching for a way out of the situation, but the earlier slip-up had left her with no words to counter us. Her silence was as good as a confession. A few hours later, Robert returned home. As he opened the living room door, he let out a loud gasp of surprise. Whoa! What the? He found me, Thomas, and Lisa sitting with our heads down. In that instant, Robert knew I had discovered his affair. Welcome home. I greeted him. Robert looked back and forth between me and Lisa, visibly shaken. I then pointed at her and asked, "Who do you think this is?" This question cornered Robert. He had to decide whether I knew about the affair or if I had met Lisa through some other connection. He decided to gamble with his answer. I don't know. Thomas's tutor? Wrong. She's your lover, right? I said in a low, menacing voice, glaring at him. Robert immediately started apologizing. I thought I could hide it and have some fun. You met her when Thomas was still in preschool. You left all the childcare to me while you went off having fun. It must have been enjoyable, right? I said. He remained silent, staring down at the floor. A decade of infidelity wouldn't be resolved with a simple apology. I then recounted the confessions Lisa had made while waiting for Robert to come home. She told me you used baby talk with her because you envied not having a child yourself. You told her that? Robert turned red with anger and lashed out at Lisa. What choice did I have? Lisa, hoping to reduce any compensation or guilt on her part, had spilled everything. It seemed betraying him was an easy decision if it meant saving herself. And you, Robert, you bragged to Lisa about being a section chief at your company, didn't you? Are you that embarrassed about being just a regular employee? Robert had always been insecure about not getting promoted and wanted to seem important in front of Lisa. He had lied, hoping to impress her. Now, with his deception exposed to the one person he wanted to fool the most, Robert crumbled in shame. "AITA!" He screamed, collapsing in embarrassment. He probably wished he could disappear. I watched his agony with a sense of satisfaction. Knowing this was just the beginning. I had learned something from Lisa that would devastate Robert even more. And you told Lisa you wanted to marry her if you got a divorce, but that's not what she wants, is it? What? Robert looked up, stunned. Actually, I'm seeing someone on the board of directors right now. I was never considering marriage with you, Robert. She had urged me to divorce him so she could leave him before getting caught. She had never intended to marry him. I couldn't help but laugh. Robert, who had thought Lisa was devoted to him, was struck dumb by the revelation. What's that supposed to mean? You're ditching me because you got found out? I'm the only one who loses here, Robert yelled. He had not only been exposed for cheating on his family, but also for making embarrassing demands and boasting with lies to his lover. On top of that, his lover ran off to be with another wealthy man. He was left with nothing, making him the ultimate loser in this situation. Do you think you're the only one who's suffering? Not even a bit. This is all your own doing, I said coolly. Robert fell silent, glaring at Lisa with resentment. I treated you so well, and now you're cutting me off as soon as you get caught. This is why women are so, he muttered, griping to himself. Thomas spoke up. Dad, stop embarrassing yourself. Realize how pathetic you are, lashing out like a child. Being told by his own son that he was worse than a child crushed whatever dignity Robert had left as a father. Seeing this unpleasant side of him, Lisa muttered, Wow, I'm so glad I never planned to marry this guy. What a miserable life that would be. Lisa had another marriage lined up with a wealthy man. Speaking so casually, I decided to remind her. Don't forget, you still owe 10 years' worth of alimony. And how do you think your new lover will react when he hears about this? Of course, I won't tell him. And as for the alimony, my boyfriend is rich, so I can pay it off easily. She spoke as if her lover's money was already hers. I chose not to challenge her on that and informed her that I would be pursuing the claim through a lawyer. Lisa boasted that she would pay it all in one go. I looked forward to seeing that play out. After Lisa left, I placed the divorce papers in front of the sobbing Robert. Complaining that he didn't want to be left with nothing after the divorce, he eventually succumbed to the cold stares from me and Thomas and filled out the forms. We thoroughly checked for any missing information before turning our backs on Robert without saying goodbye. Thomas, we'll stay at Grandma's for a while, but once we've saved enough money, we'll move near your preferred school. Thank you, but don't overdo it, Mom. I'll help out once I can get a part-time job. Thomas had always been considerate of me. I vowed to ensure our new life didn't feel constrained by the divorce. When we returned to my parents' home, they were waiting up for us despite the late hour. They had prepared beds and warmly encouraged us to rest. For the next few months, they took care of both me and Thomas. A few months later, through our lawyer, we filed compensation claims against Robert and Lisa. Robert began making monthly payments, but there was no word from Lisa, despite her earlier bravado about paying it off in one go. We sent another notice, warning of legal action if she failed to pay. Finally, we received a response from Lisa through her lawyer. It turned out that when she asked her boyfriend for a large sum of money without explaining the reason, he grew suspicious and broke up with her, thinking she was only after his money. No one, no matter how wealthy, would give away money without a reason. Lisa then confessed to her boyfriend that she had been having an affair with a married man and needed the money to pay compensation. She naively believed that a heartfelt apology would earn his forgiveness. Instead, the situation worsened. Having already introduced Lisa to his family and friends as his fiancée, he was furious at the humiliation. He used his connections to get her fired from her job as a receptionist.
Why? I'm sorry, I know I was wrong, but breaking off the engagement is too much.
Despite her protests, Lisa's life spiraled downward. She sold all her branded goods and began making small payments towards her debt. Every day, she likely lamented how her life had turned out, walking a gray path. As for Robert, he had been expensing their trips for the last 10 years. And when this was discovered, he was hit with a massive bill from his company. Between the divorce settlement, child support, and the company's claim, he was left with nothing for his own living expenses. He grew more gaunt by the day, barely eating, and making frequent mistakes at work. Eventually, his errors caused significant losses for the company, leading to his dismissal. Now, without any income and mounting debt, Robert's life fell apart. He even tried to visit my parents' house to apologize, but my dad sent him away. Whatever excuse he had to try and mend things was not worth hearing. I was grateful to my dad for protecting us from Robert's selfish attempts to reconnect. Time quickly passed, and this year, Thomas will become a lawyer.
Now, I can finally protect you no matter what, Mom.
Back in middle school, Thomas had told me he wanted to become a pharmacist. However, the incident with Robert drastically changed his dreams. If I had studied law, I might have been able to confront Dad even more. I regret my lack of knowledge. It's embarrassing. He had been lamenting this ever since we started living at my parents' house after the divorce.
What are you saying? Thanks to you, I was able to uncover the affair and get a divorce. You have nothing to feel bad about.
Despite my reassurances, a few weeks later, Thomas brought me a career survey form and firmly declared his decision.
I've decided I'm going to become a lawyer.
I was taken aback and asked him to reconsider, but Thomas's resolve was unwavering.
I want to use this experience to help many more people. So, Mom, I need your support.
Seeing the determination in his eyes, I had no choice but to support him.
If you're that determined, then go for it. I know you'll become an outstanding lawyer.
From then on, I supported Thomas through high school and university, all the way until he could become a lawyer. And this year, he has finally achieved that goal. Watching him grow, I couldn't hold back my tears. Thomas, you were so small back then. You've grown so much. He had even surpassed me in height, and I now looked up to him. Thomas would go on to support people struggling like I had, in a profession I could be proud of. I resolved to have my own dreams and goals to work toward, not wanting to be outdone by him.
He got into an accident and got hurt. We're heading to the hospital in an ambulance right now.
Vincent, my husband, called me suddenly, his voice frantic. He was supposed to be at work at this time.
What? Is it true that he got hurt in an accident? Yes, it's true. He had a bike accident. Mickey keeps mumbling, "Come quick, Mom," over and over.
My daughter, Michelle, was in the middle of summer vacation and had gone out on her bike to play with friends after having lunch.
What? No way, Michelle. Michelle? Wait. Oh.
The moment I mentioned Michelle's name, Vincent's previously agitated voice suddenly stopped. Then, unnaturally calm, he said, "Forget what I just said. Bye." And hung up without waiting for a reply. I was worried about Vincent's strange behavior, but more than that, I could only think about Michelle, who was supposedly hurt. I rushed out the door without even changing clothes. At that moment, I collided head-on with someone coming towards me from outside. Ouch! Mom, if you rush like that, you'll cause an accident. Good thing I was wearing my helmet. There stood Michelle, looking exactly as she did before she left. My name is Amelia Ingram, a 42-year-old working mother. After becoming a professional, I started to feel a bit out of shape, so I joined a tennis club for working adults, where I later met my husband, Vincent. I can't remember who spoke first, but before we knew it, we were dating. 1 year after we met.
Will you marry me? Yes, of course.
His pure, almost boyish confession of love with his star-like shining eyes completely won my heart. Nearly a year after our marriage, I gave birth to our first daughter, Michelle.
Look, Mickey, Dad's home.
Vincent was so doting on Michelle that it almost made me roll my eyes. Watching him, I felt warm inside, reassured that marrying him was the right decision. When Michelle entered kindergarten, her friendly nature quickly earned her friends, and she would tell us every day about what happened there.
That girl is Michaela. She's very kind.
That's wonderful. I hope you two become even closer.
Michaela, huh? So she's Mickey too?
Vincent said, laughing with a sense of affinity.
Stop it. If you keep calling them both that, you'll get confused and embarrass yourself.
That would be funny if it happened. Vincent laughed heartily. Since our children were close friends, we quickly became friendly with Michaela's parents.
Thank you for always looking after our Michaela. Let's keep being friends.
Michaela's parents, the Stewarts, were both cheerful and easygoing. After about half a year, we frequently visited each other's homes and enjoyed barbecues together during holidays. Michaela's mom, Hilda, had been in the tennis club in school and had even competed at the national level. Hilda had been curious ever since she heard Vincent's name.
I thought the name sounded familiar. I always admired you. Meeting Mr. Ingram like this is a miracle.
Hilda's eyes sparkled as she spoke. During my school days, I wasn't involved in sports at all, so I didn't know this, but apparently, Vincent was quite a famous figure in the college tennis community. Vincent, feeling good about being reminded of his past glory.
How about this weekend?
He said, mimicking a racket swing. I'd love to see Hilda play tennis. Having completely opened up to Hilda, I said that. Hilda's husband, Hilton, declined because he had to work.
Well, you should go and enjoy yourself.
He encouraged Hilda. Thus, we started inviting her to play tennis every weekend. Hilda, having participated in national tournaments, kept up with Vincent's agile movements, unlike me who was just building my stamina. Unable to keep up with their movements at all, I soon ran out of breath and rested alone on the bench. When Vincent won with a powerful smash.
That's our Vincent. Fantastic.
Hilda ran over and pressed a chilled drink from the cooler box to Vincent's cheek. Vincent let out a surprised cold, and Hilda laughed amusedly. An elderly couple passing by on their walk commented,
Look at that. What a lovely couple.
Yes, it reminds me of our younger days. They looked at Vincent and Hilda, reminiscing about their youth. Now that it was mentioned, Vincent and Hilda could indeed be mistaken for a married couple by strangers. Thinking this, I felt a bit gloomy. Whether he knew my feelings or not, Vincent started going out to play tennis with Hilda whenever they could find time, even without me. Did you go out with Hilda again? At least you could have invited me. Seeing Vincent's tennis bag after he came home sweating, I realized they had gone out together again. I thought you might be tired from housework and your part-time job. I was trying to be considerate. I tried to believe this was his way of being kind. Soon, Vincent and Hilda not only played tennis but also often went shopping together and took turns picking up the kids from kindergarten. Don't you think you're going out with Hilda too much lately? When I confronted Vincent, he showed me a small package containing jewelry. I was planning to give this to you on your birthday. I asked Hilda for advice on what would make you happy. He smiled innocently. Before we got married, Vincent often came up with surprise plans for me. Knowing he still loved me, I felt relieved. In the fall, the preschool performance at our kids' kindergarten took place. It's Mickey's first performance. We need to capture every moment. Vincent took a day off, and for the first time in a while, we went to the kindergarten together. At the Stewart families, Hilton showed up briefly and then tried to leave quickly. Is it work? That must be tough, I casually remarked, to which Hilton, looking uneasy. Well, yes, kind of. He replied ambiguously and left in a hurry. Sorry about that. He's been having a hard time at work lately and is always in a bad mood. She apologized on his behalf. The preschool performance ended without incident, but from around this time, Hilton started avoiding interactions with us. We seem to be getting avoided by Hilton. I expressed my concern. You're overthinking it. He's probably just swamped with work, she said with a wry smile. Hilton, who used to be so friendly, had suddenly become distant, and I felt a bit lonely, but she didn't seem to mind. We continued to interact with the Stewart family, and when Michelle started elementary school, she suddenly wanted a bicycle. Michaela is getting one too. Michelle pleaded persistently, tugging on my apron, and Vincent, who was listening. You should just get her a bike. Folded his newspaper and said, Really? You usually say not to give in to the kids' wants so easily. Well, it's inconvenient for her not to have one to go out with her friends. I'll buy her one. If you say so. I was a bit surprised, but decided to trust Vincent's kindness towards Michelle. So on Sunday, Vincent and Michelle went to Walmart to buy a bicycle. When they returned, Michelle was wearing a brand new pink helmet and kept looking at herself in the mirror. Mom, I got the same one as Michaela. Her mom said this one suited me. Was Hilda there too? Well, yes, I guess so. Vincent nodded awkwardly. By the time Michelle was in second grade, it became routine for her and Michaela to go out on their bikes. Do your homework first. I will when I get back. That was our daily parent-child conversation. When summer vacation started, we couldn't go anywhere due to Vincent's work, but at least I can play with Michaela a lot. Michelle was happy, so it wasn't a problem. After lunch, Michelle would ride her bike without doing any summer homework. One evening, I received an urgent call from Vincent. Mickey's been in an accident and injured. She's in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. What? An accident? Is it true? Yes, it's true. She crashed while riding her bike. Mickey is delirious in the ambulance, repeating "Come quickly, Mom" over and over. No way, Michelle. Michelle? Wait, oh. Vincent's voice, which had been full of urgency, suddenly fell silent. Then, unnaturally calm, he said, "Forget what I said. Goodbye." And hung up abruptly without waiting for my response. Vincent's behavior bothered me, but all I could think about was Michelle's injury. I rushed out the door without even changing my clothes. At that moment, I collided headfirst with someone running towards me. Ouch! Mom, if you rush like that, you'll get into an accident. Good thing I'm wearing a helmet. There was Michelle, looking just the same as before she left.
Michelle, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?
I asked rapidly while checking her all over, as she had fallen and hit her bottom. Michelle frowned, looking ticklish. I'm fine. What about you, Mom? Did you get hurt? She was worried about me instead.
Vincent called and said you had a bike accident. What? I don't know anything about that.
She looked back at me with innocent eyes, clearly unaware of the situation, her surprise evident.
We're heading to the hospital by ambulance now. I just got a call from Dad.
That's a lie. I'm fine. I'm not hurt at all, see? Michelle brushed the sand off her pants and spun around to show she was uninjured. Indeed, Michelle's body showed no signs of injury. Was it a mistake, and had I just been dreaming? But when I checked my phone's call history, I saw that Vincent had definitely called me 10 minutes ago. I remembered he had said something strange before hanging up, just forget about it. I called Vincent back, and after a few rings, he answered with a heavy voice, yes. Vincent, Michelle is safe. She just got home and doesn't seem hurt at all. What was that call about?
It was nothing. Just forget it.
Vincent tried to laugh it off. But in the background, I could hear many people bustling around.
Check for any brain abnormalities. Hurry!
Yes, doctor. It was clearly a tense situation. Is it really nothing? Because I hear.
It's just TV. Our company has a trend of watching medical dramas while working. We're busy here. I'll hang up now.
Vincent hung up before I could say anything. Too busy to take a call, but with time to watch TV dramas? I tried calling back several times, but Vincent had turned off his phone. It got completely dark, and as I was thinking about reheating the soup for dinner, Vincent called. Sorry, I won't be able to come home tonight. Work isn't finished. I see. I nodded and hung up, then reheated the soup. The next day, Michelle came home from her rabbit care duty at school with a gloomy expression. Usually, she'd go out to ride her bike immediately. Today at school, the teacher told me. Michelle said that Michaela had a bike accident and was taken to the hospital. However, the teacher didn't know any details about her injuries. A bike accident yesterday. Vincent's strange phone call came back to my mind. There was no way it was unrelated to that call. I said goodbye to Michaela yesterday. It happened after that. Recalling the previous day, Michelle started crying. I want to visit Michaela in the hospital. Since Michelle wanted to visit, I quickly got ready and we headed to the hospital where Michaela was admitted. Michelle. You came. Michaela looked surprisingly well, which made me sigh in relief. Her mother, Hilda, was sitting next to her bed.
Amelia, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
But Hilda quickly looked away from me for some reason. I was so shocked when I heard she was rushed to the hospital after a bike accident. According to Hilda, Michaela had a slight fracture in her arm, and she wouldn't be in the hospital for long. I'm sorry for the trouble Vincent caused. At that moment, I responded. Huh? Why was Vincent's name mentioned here? Sure, the day before, I got a strange call from Vincent about Michelle's bike accident, but Vincent kept saying it was a mistake. Why is Vincent's name coming up? Does he have something to do with the accident? I asked, and this time Hilda looked surprised.
What? Didn't you hear about Michaela's accident from him?
I explained that the information about Michaela's accident came from Michelle's school teacher. Then Hilda looked obviously uncomfortable and muttered,
Oh no!
There was definitely something behind that call. I couldn't help but be convinced. Can you tell me what happened yesterday? I asked calmly, with a smile. Hilda stammered, unable to give a proper answer. Well, Michelle's mom. Ignoring the adult tension, Michaela began talking about the accident. According to Michaela, she got into the accident right after parting ways with Michelle. Michaela saw Hilda and Vincent holding hands from a distance and tried to call out to them.
Whoa! Michaela! Stop it!
Hilda tried to interrupt Michaela's testimony in a panic. Go on. I'd like to hear more from Michaela. Michaela smiled cutely and said, okay, and continued. Just as she was about to call out to them, she unfortunately collided with a truck coming out from a side road. The truck had slowed down, but Michaela's light body and bicycle were easily thrown off. Fortunately, she landed on soft soil instead of concrete, and since she was wearing a helmet, she avoided serious injury. Hilda and Vincent were too far away to notice her accident. Later, Hilda turned a corner and disappeared from sight after parting ways with Vincent. Vincent, who came towards Michaela, finally noticed the accident.
Michelle's dad stayed with me at the hospital.
Michaela recalled happily. That's good. I glanced at Hilda, who still had her head down and wouldn't look up. What's wrong, Hilda? You don't look well. Nothing. Hilda replied, her lips trembling. I should get going to prepare dinner, so I'll be leaving now.
Michelle, see you.
Bye, Michaela. Michaela kept smiling, but Hilda remained silent until Michelle and I left the hospital room. Michaela's mom didn't seem well. She's probably sleep-deprived from taking care of Michaela. I brushed off the question and gently patted Michelle's head. When we got home, Vincent was already there.
You're home early today.
Yeah. It seems that Hilda has already reported on the interactions in the hospital room that day. He seemed unsettled, like he was trying hard to think of something to say.
I visited Michaela in the hospital today.
Really? How is she doing?
Oh. I never mentioned that Michaela was in the hospital because of an accident. She could be sick, you know.
Yeah, just had a feeling. Vincent was clearly agitated. Well, all right. I reported on Michaela's injury. But more importantly, it seems like you know something, doesn't it?
I don't know. What could you possibly mean?
I pressed him about the phone call from the previous day. That was just a joke. I just wanted to surprise you. But I never imagined Michaela would actually end up in the hospital the same day. It's a lesson not to joke about such things. Now, shower time. I was so busy yesterday that I didn't even have time to take a shower. Vincent said all he could and then quickly disappeared into the shower room, almost as if to escape. I could hear him humming to the sound of the water running in the shower. All right, now's my chance. I picked up Vincent's mobile phone from the table and opened the messaging app. If my suspicions were correct, there should be some kind of clue. Vincent should be in frequent contact with Hilda, but there wasn't a single message between them in the usual messaging app. Finding this strange, I decided to check his free email app just in case. The app was locked, but I remembered something Michelle had told me before.
Michaela's mom's birthday is just one day apart from Grandpa's.
I tried entering my dad's birthday, shifted by one day, and the lock was easily bypassed. There were numerous exchanges with Hilda. Did he think using a free email address would prevent him from getting caught? The emails were filled with love words so passionate that I blushed just reading them. I heard the shower stop and quickly put his mobile phone back in its original place. Vincent came out of the bathroom, still humming, and checked his phone for any new emails.
Are you expecting an email from someone?
No, it's just work. Vincent instinctively tried to hide his phone behind his back, unaware that it was already too late. For the next few days, we didn't mention Michaela's accident at all. We continued with light greetings and everyday conversations, so on the surface, we might have seemed like a normal couple. However, I hadn't forgiven Vincent and Hilda's relationship. In fact, my true feelings were quite the opposite. I wanted to sever ties with Vincent and leave this house as soon as possible. The only reason I maintained this facade was for Michelle's sake. Michelle, with her sharp intuition even as a child, had sensed something was wrong when I discovered the affair between Vincent and Hilda. "What's wrong, Mom? Are you feeling unwell?" she asked with concern. I didn't want to burden my kind-hearted Michelle with this, but I knew I would have to deal with it eventually. With a determined heart, I invited the Stewarts over to our house. "This is my one and only chance," I said to myself, trying to muster the courage every time I felt like running away while looking in the mirror. On that day, both Vincent and Hilda's husband, Hilton, had the day off from work. I didn't want Michelle to overhear such an adult conversation, but fortunately, she had rabbit care duty that day. According to Hilton, Michaela's injury had completely healed.
She should be able to leave the hospital in 2 or 3 days.
That's good to hear. I felt a sense of relief hearing this good news from Hilton. I wanted to finish the conversation before Michelle came home from school, so I got straight to the point.
"Hilda, since when have you been in a relationship with Vincent?" Whoa, what are you talking about all of a sudden?
That's right, Amelia. There's no way Vincent and I are involved in that way. Both Vincent and Hilda tried to laugh it off. I swiftly grabbed Vincent's phone from the corner of the table, skillfully opened his emails, and began reading the exchanges between him and Hilda.
"This is undeniable proof. Can you explain this?" "You! When did you? It's incredibly rude to snoop through someone else's phone without permission." "Exactly. Even between spouses, looking through each other's phones without permission is a violation of privacy."
Both of them ignored their own actions and solely blamed me.
"So, you admit the relationship?"
When I said that, they fell silent. No matter what they said, the fact of their affair wouldn't change. They both seemed to realize this. After a while of silence, Hilton, who had been quiet until then, stood up.
"There is more evidence."
He scattered dozens of photos on the table from his bag.
"What is this?"
Hilda panicked and started to collect the photos in a hurry, but I managed to snatch a few from her before she could. The photos showed Vincent and Hilda entering and exiting a hotel. In all the photos, they were wearing different outfits. This meant the photos were taken on different days. They had not met just once, but had been frequently meeting at the hotel.
"Have we been followed all this time?"
Hilda glared at Hilton with a devilish expression.
"I'm busy with work. There's no way."
He calmly denied it. In reality, Hilton had noticed their relationship earlier than I did. He had secretly hired an investigator to look into them without Hilda knowing. Even after the affair became obvious, Hilton couldn't pursue it because the kids were close friends, and in case of divorce, custody usually favored the mother.
"But Amelia, when you asked me to come with Hilda today, I knew this day had finally come."
Hilton realized he couldn't overlook the affair any longer, so he brought the investigator's report and evidence photos with him. Vincent and Hilda, unable to deny it any longer, finally admitted their affair. They had bonded over tennis and started contacting each other even when I wasn't around. Initially, it was just a relationship between parents with kids, without any deeper feelings. However, over time, romantic feelings developed between them. I can't explain it well, but I couldn't get her out of my mind. I feel the same way, Vincent. Their embarrassing statements, without a hint of shame, made me question if they were really parents. Even on the day Michaela had her accident, they were on their way back from the hotel, trying to avoid being seen by acquaintances. Hilda had turned the corner first, unaware of Michaela's presence. She was probably basking in the excitement of spending time with Vincent. When Vincent noticed Michaela reaching out, calling, "Mom, Mom," he hurried over to her. A truck driver was already there, and an ambulance had been called. When the ambulance arrived and they climbed in, Michaela once again said, "Mom, come quickly," so feeling sorry for her, Vincent took out his mobile phone. However, in his agitated state, Vincent mistakenly called me instead of Michaela's mother, Hilda. The moment I said Michelle's name, Vincent realized his mistake. But he couldn't think of a good excuse on the spot, so he abruptly ended the call with, "Forget it." Vincent says he doesn't even remember why he made such a clumsy excuse. He quickly contacted Hilda, and when she arrived at the hospital, Vincent left the room. He was wary that I might hear the news somewhere and visit the hospital. But as he approached home, he couldn't think of a good way to explain it to me, so he stayed in a business hotel that night, citing work as the reason. What's done is done. I've decided. I'm going to marry Hilda. Thank you, Vincent. I'm happy too. I was too stunned to say anything.
Is that truly how you feel?
Hilton asked in a low voice, tinged with anger. Yes, I've made up my mind. Since our affair has been exposed, there's no need to meet in secret anymore, so I'm going to think positively.
Don't think you both can get away with this. If you're serious, we have our plans too.
I exchanged a look with Hilton, and he nodded firmly, understanding my intent.
Yes, I'll fight this with everything I've got. I have a friend from college who's a lawyer. I'll consult with him. Do as you please. Our love won't change.
He brazenly pulled Hilda's shoulder close. I waited for Michelle to return and stayed in a hotel that night. The next day, I took Michelle to my parents' house until the divorce was finalized. At first, Michelle was happy, saying,
"I can play with Grandpa and Grandma."
But when she realized she couldn't see Vincent, she lost her cheerfulness. Later, Vincent and I finalized our divorce. With the help of the lawyer Hilton introduced, I secured alimony and child support from Vincent. At the same time, Hilton and Hilda also finalized their divorce, receiving similar settlements. Even in such a predicament,
I can be with my beloved Hilda. I'll cover the alimony and child support,
he proudly said. Can't I live with Dad anymore? Michelle cried every night, missing his dad. I'm sorry, Michelle. All I could do was hold her close and comfort her. After the divorce, I moved with Michelle into a small apartment, and Hilda moved into Vincent's house. Though they initially rejoiced, thinking they could be together without any worries, Vincent's parents and Hilda's parents didn't approve of their relationship. My usually mild-mannered father-in-law became so enraged that he declared he was cutting ties with him. It was only natural, given that he had betrayed his beloved granddaughter in the worst way. Still, Vincent and Hilda lived without concern for a few weeks, but rumors of their affair quickly spread throughout the town. Wherever they went, they heard voices of contempt directed at them, and eventually, they had to leave town in less than 3 months. I heard that he was feeling quite awkward at work because of the rumors about his affair. However, since they were no longer part of my life, their fate was no concern of mine. I focused more than ever on my part-time jobs to raise Michelle. I had no time to look back on the past. Occasionally, Hilton would come by to check on us, bringing Michaela along.
Here's a souvenir from my recent business trip.
Such fancy tea. Thank you, as always. After the accident, Michaela became afraid to ride a bike and stopped riding altogether. Still, she and Michelle played card games together in the room, just like before.
Kids are much stronger than we adults think.
I've decided to protect her smile no matter what happens.
I feel the same way,
he said with a bright, charming smile. Many years passed, and Michelle and Michaela grew into beautiful young women, fell in love, and got married.
Mom, I'm home.
During summer vacation, Michelle visited my apartment, carrying her newborn daughter. Next to her, Michaela was holding her own baby girl. We ran into each other at the bus terminal. We didn't realize we were on the same Amtrak.
It's incredible how close you two are, getting married and having babies around the same time.
I couldn't help but burst into laughter. The babies in their arms laughed along with me. I'm selling this house because I'm moving in with my girlfriend. Dad, who betrayed Mom, further hurt her. This house was in Dad's name, but Mom had contributed a significant amount of money to build it, and she loved this house. Yet, Dad decided to claim everything for himself without considering Mom's feelings. Now, 12 years after my parents' divorce, I've come to understand things I couldn't back then and decided to take revenge on Dad. I couldn't forgive Dad for living comfortably after hurting Mom, who had struggled to raise me. Does your company condone affairs? That's what I told them during my interview at Dad's company. My name is Chloe. I'm a 21-year-old senior in college, currently job hunting. When I was in 4th grade, my parents divorced, and we moved to Mom's parents' house, which meant changing schools and my entire environment, which led to some mental instability. I wasn't very sociable, so making friends was hard. Being a child of divorce, I was often left out, and I didn't have the courage to initiate conversations. For the 2 years from the transfer until graduating elementary school, I had no close friends and felt isolated, often getting sad remembering friends from my previous school. Moreover, Mom was working all day, so our time together decreased, and I spent more time with my grandparents. My grandparents were caring, but having always been with my parents, I found it hard to open up to them. However, things settled down when I started middle school. There were many students from different elementary schools, so I finally met people who didn't prejudge me for my parents' divorce. I made friends and slowly started to become happier, leaving behind my constant sadness. Determined not to burden Mom, I focused more on my studies. I got a scholarship that covered tuition for college, leading to a busy life filled with studies and part-time work. I wanted to make Mom's life peaceful and happy, so even in my busy life, I felt fulfilled. I've become more sociable than before, but the trauma from my past still lingers. Until 4th grade, when my parents divorced, I lived a normal life with both Mom and Dad. I was a shy child, so even though I had friends, I mostly spent weekends with my family. I think I was a child who loved my parents dearly. We used to have family meals together every morning and evening, and after dinner, we'd spend time together as a family. But then Dad started coming home late from work, and there were nights he wouldn't return before I went to bed. Dad was already in a managerial position then, and Mom told me he couldn't come home because of the responsibilities and overtime. Even though I felt lonely, I understood that it was Dad's job that provided for our current lifestyle. So I hoped Dad would be able to finish work earlier. This routine continued until one night, I woke up and heard my parents arguing. This was something that had never happened before, and curiosity overcame my anxiety. I cautiously approached to see what was happening. Dad, angry and carrying his belongings, stormed out of the living room.
Enough. I'd rather be with my girlfriend than you. We're getting a divorce.
Mom started crying at his words, but Dad ignored her and headed for the front door.
Dad.
Knowing what divorce meant, I feared I'd never see Dad again, so I ran after him and clung to him, hoping the kind dad who used to play with me would stop.
Get out of my way.
But Dad, who had never been rough with me before, glanced at me coldly and shook me off without hesitation. Thrown harshly, I rolled down the hallway, bruising myself. I burst into tears from the shock of Dad's anger and being pushed away. And the pain made the reality even harder to bear. Confused about why Dad suddenly became cold towards me, I couldn't stop crying. Mom hugged me while I cried, but Dad left the house without looking back, even though I was crying. Seeing Dad leave like that, I felt abandoned and cried even harder. This incident made me afraid to trust anyone but Mom for a while, and I think it made me even more introverted. Dad never returned after that, and we continued living in the house, but a few days later, he came back. I briefly hoped we could be a family again, but that hope was quickly shattered.
I'm selling this house because I'm moving in with my girlfriend. Get out.
Dad showed Mom some documents. I remember this house being built when I was in first grade. Mom was delighted to have our own home. I was sure they had built it together. So Mom protested Dad selling the house on his own, but since it was in his name, she had to give up. Thus, Mom and I were forced to move to her parents' house. As a child, I was not privy to the dealings between Mom and Dad that followed. However, I often wondered why Mom worked so hard, even though she probably should be receiving compensation and child support. I assumed part of her effort was for my sake, but I thought we would have more financial leeway if Dad had been paying child support. Curious, I asked my grandparents about it during high school. I thought Mom wouldn't want to tell me, and it must have been a painful topic for her too, so I couldn't ask her. According to my grandparents, it seemed Dad had fled without paying any alimony or child support. Mom had contacted him numerous times about the missing payments, but after he became unreachable, she decided to prioritize our future and let it go. As I suspected, their divorce was due to Dad's infidelity, confirming that he had betrayed our family. Hearing this from my grandparents, I understood why Mom worked so hard and felt a surge of anger towards Dad. Mom, it seemed, had given up pursuing Dad further and hadn't even tried to find his address to urge him to pay for alimony or child support. Though I was angry with Dad, who didn't seem to have much remorse, my desire to ease Mom's burdens quickly overshadowed it. I wanted to make sure Mom, who always prioritizes me over herself and is busy from morning till night, could have some time to relax. I've always thought that Mom should take more care of herself. Using my anger towards Dad as motivation, I doubled down on my studies, aiming to land a good job to assist Mom. The thought of Dad living carefree was frustrating, but I tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on our current life, just like Mom. As a university student beginning to think about job hunting, I was organizing our storage to create a better resume. I hoped to recall past experiences for my self-promotion. While sorting through storage, I found letters from friends before I transferred schools in elementary, immersing myself in memories. Then, I came across an unfamiliar box. Curious, I opened it and found it contained documents from an investigation into Dad's infidelity. I was shocked to find these hidden away. Though I had tried to stop thinking about Dad, I still wanted to know what had happened between my parents. Compelled, I began to read the documents. As I read the story in more detail than what I heard from my grandparents, my desire for revenge against Dad grew. My grandparents probably had chosen their words carefully or didn't know the full extent. Reading further, I realized Dad had done worse things than I had imagined. He had been unfaithful for longer than I thought, and it seemed he hadn't even tried to hide his late nights from Mom. His affair was with a woman 6 years his junior, who had had a difficult life herself. After a car accident left her mom dead, she had been working since she was a student because her dad had after effects. Despite having a more challenging life than mine, how could she not feel remorse for destroying a family? In the evidence photos of the affair, the woman walking arm in arm with Dad was visibly pregnant. I couldn't help feeling disgusted seeing the two of them looking so content together. To anyone unaware, they would seem like a happy couple. Yet in reality, they were two people who didn't care about the misery they brought upon Mom and me. I had tried not to dwell on my anger towards Dad, but seeing this, it was impossible. I felt an overwhelming urge to make them suffer, but I managed to hold back. I thought about how Mom would be saddened if anything happened to me and about the potential future of their child, who must be around middle school age by now, 12 years after the divorce. I couldn't forgive Dad and his mistress, but acting on my emotions would only harm their child, causing them the same pain I endured. I didn't want to stoop to Dad's level, and that thought stopped me. However, the anger was too strong to ignore. A few days later, on a weekend, I decided to visit the house mentioned in the investigation report. I doubted they would still be there after all this time, but I needed to check. Upon arrival, I found the house no longer existed, which left me with mixed feelings of disappointment and relief. I had wanted to confront Dad about his affair and ask about Mom, but the thought of actually meeting him was nerve-wracking. As I was walking away, convinced I would never meet him and that I should forget him, I noticed a nameplate with Dad's name. I stopped, startled. Trying to convince myself it was probably someone else, curiosity led me to observe the house more closely. It was a spacious family home with a play area for children. Being a weekend, I could faintly hear children's voices. If Dad had remarried his mistress after the divorce, it wouldn't be strange if they had a family. The thought was suffocating, and as I watched the front door open and children come out, I moved to a spot farther away to continue observing. Then, the parents followed, and despite looking older than in the photos, I recognized them as Dad and his mistress. Dad had built a happy family with his mistress without paying us any compensation or child support. While Mom struggled, Dad lived comfortably. Filled with anger, I clenched my fists. After watching them leave happily as a family, I headed straight to a detective agency and requested an investigation into Dad's family. I used all my savings and part-time job earnings for this. When I later received the investigation results, it confirmed that Dad had been living well after the divorce, with 3 children. While Mom and I struggled, Dad lived comfortably without facing any consequences for his affair, a fact that left me bitter. I realized I harbored not just anger but also resentment towards Dad and his mistress, who lived carefree after abandoning Mom and me. I wanted them to experience the same pain and hardship that Mom and I went through. However, recognizing that even though they were the worst, their children were innocent, I wanted to speak with them at least once, more for my peace of mind than for revenge. So, calming myself for a composed conversation, I decided to visit after school. Dad would be at work and the kids at school, leaving his housewife mistress, Abigail, at home. What was she thinking, having an affair with a married man and now living happily with him? With questions and things I wanted to say, I went to their house on a day school ended in the morning and rang the doorbell. As expected, Abigail answered. "Yes, how can I help you?" Her normal response irritated me, and I blurted out, "How can you live normally after stealing Dad from Mom and me and breaking up our family?" It seemed I wasn't as calm as I thought, speaking sharply without realizing. What? What are you talking about?" She seemed quite dubious, possibly on guard because of the sudden question. Perhaps for her, an affair was something that could be easily forgotten. This thought made my chest tighten. Amazed at how she could pretend not to know, I explained everything about my relationship with Dad and what happened 12 years ago. I broke into tears recalling the past, but once I finished, I looked at her for a reaction. The truth I learned then solidified my resolve for revenge. Some time later, I went for a job interview. With good grades and active involvement in various activities, I had many strong points. I usually passed the document screening without issues, and this time, as I faced the interviewers, it seemed like I had already left a favorable impression again. 3 interviewers questioned me while reviewing my documents. Thanks to my preparation, I answered smoothly, and the interviewer's cheerful expression and impressed attitude made me feel quite confident. At the end, when they said I could ask any questions I had, I decided to ask something I had been wanting to know. Does your company condone affairs? What actions would be taken if an affair occurs? My question surprised the interviewers, leaving them momentarily speechless. After a pause, they said they hadn't encountered such a situation but would probably impose some penalty. And when asked why I was inquiring about this, I explained the whole situation. My father, who abandoned my mother through infidelity, works here and is currently having an affair within the company. One interviewer, visibly upset, slammed the table and stood up angrily.
Are you joking? How dare you come here and lie in such a manner? This is outrageous.
I immediately retorted. Please don't shout just because I hit a nerve, Dad. I had actually known that Dad worked in this company and that he was involved in interviews as personnel. Therefore, I purposely attended this interview to expose Dad's actions. There were many interviewees, and it wasn't certain Dad would be the interviewer, but I thought damaging his reputation would be enough. His aggressive response to my presence added credibility to my story, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. Initially, Dad didn't seem to recognize me, but he became unsettled after reading my documents. He didn't remember my face, but my name and educational background must have made him realize I was the daughter of his ex-wife. He seemed relieved when I showed no reaction to seeing him, thinking I hadn't recognized him. I calmly retorted to Dad's anger. It's a fact that you cheated on Mom and are now in an affair with a younger woman in this company, right? I'm just stating the truth. The investigation I had commissioned revealed not only about Dad's post-divorce family but also his infidelity. Apparently, Dad was quite the philanderer, having 3 kids and still fooling around. He was having an affair with a younger female colleague, and there were photos of them looking happy together, leaving no room for denial.
Is this some kind of harassment? Do you think you can get away with this?
Dad accused me of lying and tried to blame me. He had been successful in hiding his actions so far and was desperate not to be punished. Smirking, I continued. It's the truth, isn't it? I wanted to know what the company thinks about having such a person in a responsible position. Dad wanted to make me look bad, but that wasn't going to happen. The other 2 interviewers, having witnessed our exchange, looked displeased. I showed them the final piece of evidence. By the way, this is the report on Dad's infidelity. I trust you will review it and take appropriate action. Dad tried to dismiss what I said in a panic, but I handed the investigation report to the other interviewers, asking them to address the affair. Dad tried to grab me, but I dodged and delivered my final blow. Abigail knows about this and is coming to the office today. I had told Abigail about Dad's affair, and in her anger, she had planned to confront him publicly. So before leaving the interview room, I declared to Dad that he had no escape.
You told her? When did you even meet her?
Dad, shocked and not expecting I knew Abigail, froze. Ignoring him, I left the room. Dad's yelling could still be heard after I closed the door, drawing stares from other interviewees. Normally, the atmosphere would feel uncomfortable, but knowing that I had derailed Dad's smooth life brought me a sense of relief. Originally, I came to this company solely for revenge against Dad, so failing the interview was not a concern. Having finished my task, I was walking down the hallway when I heard footsteps running up from behind. Turning around, I saw Dad, his face red with anger, charging at me to throw a punch. Surprised, I managed to dodge and avoided injury, but I stumbled and fell. Looking down at me, Dad shouted angrily.
What have you done? If it weren't for you.
As Dad tried to hit me again, I braced myself, unable to evade, and covered my head with my arms, preparing for the impact. However, before he could strike, Dad froze.
What are you doing to Chloe? And what's this about an affair? You told me you were single, but you've been deceiving me.
Abigail had arrived, startling Dad. She swung her bag at Dad, who was ready to strike me, hitting and shielding me from him.
Abigail, it's not what you think.
Dad panicked at Abigail's arrival, but as Abigail, angered and feeling deceived, started to confront him, they began to argue. Abigail, while shouting in anger, hit Dad with her bag, causing a major commotion. It turned out that when I confronted Abigail about the affair, she was unaware that Dad was married.
I'm sorry, even if I didn't know. You must have suffered a lot. I will definitely make it up to you. I'm truly sorry.
She apologized tearfully. Further conversation revealed that she met Dad through work, and he had been helping her as a struggling motherless child. Dad had hidden his marital status, and they eventually started dating. Abigail had been working right after graduating high school in order to live with her father, who suffered from the after effects of an accident, which also took away her mother. It was natural to develop feelings for Dad, who had helped her. I had thought the mistress would be a terrible person, but Abigail was another victim of Dad. Apparently, Mom had never asked Abigail for compensation or even contacted her, and until now, Abigail was unaware of Dad's misdeeds. I wondered why Mom hadn't pursued compensation from Abigail, but then remembered she was pregnant at the time. Perhaps Mom didn't want to burden a pregnant woman, even if she was the mistress. Thinking this as I watched Abigail tearfully apologize, I realized she wasn't the villain I had thought her to be. She didn't look like she was trying to deceive me. So, I told her about Dad's current affair with a coworker. The investigation report included evidence of Dad's ongoing infidelity. I thought that Abigail, being a victim herself, deserved to know about Dad's current actions. When I showed her the documents, she became furiously angry at Dad.
He lied about being single, married me, and now this? What kind of person is he? I will never forgive him.
Her anger towards Dad, the betrayer, ran deep, and together we decided to take revenge on him. Originally, I had applied to Dad's company and was already scheduled for a second-round interview. So, on the day of the interview, Abigail and I had planned to go to the company and publicly denounce Dad. The two caused quite a scene in the company hallway, with other male employees restraining Dad and security arriving. I took Abigail's hand and led her out of the company after the commotion. Many people had gathered around due to the noise. Among them, I spotted the woman from the investigation photos, hiding in the shadows with a petrified look on her face. My revenge was complete by exposing Dad's misdeeds, which had been hidden until now. Subsequently, Dad, who was on the verge of becoming a department head, got demoted to a regular employee due to the affair. Since most of the situation became known during the chaos in the hallway, he seems to be working with a sense of humility. He used to have a reputation as a family-oriented and capable supervisor, but when Dad's bad deeds became known within the company, he was branded the worst man and was treated coldly. The woman Dad had an affair with apparently quietly resigned from the company. Additionally, Abigail demanded compensation and child support from Dad and informed him of her intention to divorce. With the company's cooperation, Dad couldn't escape paying. During the divorce mediation, Abigail discovered that Dad had not paid any compensation or child support to my mom, and also learned of his gambling habits in addition to spending money for his lover. Though he claimed it was occasional, he had been deceitfully spending family savings on gambling. Abigail, further enraged by these revelations, successfully demanded a higher amount of compensation and child support from Dad. Dad tried to deceive until the very end and was very reluctant about the divorce and compensation, so the mediation didn't end quickly. But Abigail persistently questioned Dad, and the commotion became known even to those outside the company who were unaware of the chaos at the office. Consequently, acquaintances of Dad who were unaware of the situation gradually distanced themselves from him. Dad became completely isolated as a result. After the divorce, Abigail offered me a part of the compensation as an apology.
This might not be enough to make amends, but I hope you'll accept it as an apology for the trouble I've caused.
However, since I had kept my revenge against Dad a secret from Mom, I declined the money.
Abigail, you're also a victim of Dad, and the children need the money more. Please keep it for them.
Mom seemed to have put her past with Dad behind her, so I had no intention of bringing it up again. I thought that Mom, who must have suffered a lot, wouldn't want to remember it anymore, even after Dad received his comeuppance. I didn't harbor any resentment towards Abigail or her children, who were also victims of Dad. Instead, I frequently visited them, concerned about their well-being as a single-parent family. The children and I grew close. And I hope they grow up righteously, unlike Dad. Getting to know Abigail better, I realized she was naturally calm and not the type to raise her voice. The stark contrast to the woman who had fiercely confronted Dad in the company made me reconsider Mom's strength during the divorce. Later, I successfully got a job at my preferred company and shared the news with Mom, who was overjoyed at my growth. Seeing her happiness made me feel content. And without the shadow of Dad, I truly relished the moment. Determined to reduce Mom's burden, I geared up for my new job. I may never forgive Dad for his actions, but he's already received his just desserts. Now, I want to live happily, not worrying about Dad anymore. My daughter Emma was getting married, and we were off to a family meeting. When we entered the designated room, Phil Henry and Mil Lauren were already seated. They looked like they were in the middle of a conversation, smirking unpleasantly. Looking at the table, I noticed that only 3 settings were prepared on our side. I realized this was their sly way of harassing us. "Please, take a seat." "Oh, just the 2 of you? We're a single-mother household," I replied, lifting the corners of my eyes, trying to stay calm. But Lauren let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, that's right. Maybe you should take this in a food storage container? Single mothers are poor, right?" Lauren covered her mouth, trying to suppress her laughter. Despite her harsh words, I kept my expression unchanged. Seeing enough, Emma tapped my shoulder. "That's awful. Mom, let's go." "Why leave?" "If it means you, who've sacrificed everything for me, have to suffer, I'd rather not get married." Touched by Emma's kindness, I smiled. "It's okay. Just wait a bit." Then, an employee came from behind with a food storage container. "Here, please take this home," he offered to Lauren. Henry and Lauren were taken aback, stunned. "If being poor is about low income, please, take it." "Huh? My name is Rachel. In my 50s, I feel like I've reached the midpoint of my life, living in a slightly spacious single-family home with my daughter, Emma. When Emma is at school, I sometimes feel a pang of loneliness in the quiet of our living room. That's when I make it a ritual to prepare 2 mugs of tea, one for me and the other for my late husband, Nathan. Pouring tea for Nathan and imagining he might be with me brings comfort. Nathan was diagnosed with cancer about 20 years ago and passed away suddenly as we were about to start his treatment. On his deathbed, he implored me to take care of Emma. She must become someone admirable. At that time, Emma was too young to remember much about her dad. To fulfill my promise to Nathan and to prevent Emma from feeling lonely or sad, I raised her single-handedly, balancing work, household duties, and parenting. Despite being a single mother, I managed to send Emma to college. Emma grew up to be academically excellent, beautiful, and a genuinely kind and wonderful woman. She's my pride and joy. After graduating, she got a job and started living on her own. I can't always rely on you, Mom. It's time I do something in return for what you've done for me. Don't worry about me, just do your best. Eat properly, don't stay up too late, and... Come on, I'm not a child anymore. What are you saying? You'll always be my precious child. The night before she moved out, Emma and I stayed up late, talking about the past, the future, and about her dad. We never ran out of memories to share, losing track of time. Even after Emma started living by herself, she would send various texts to my mobile phone. She would complain about unpacking, cooking, training at work, and colleagues. Each text made me feel as if Emma was right beside me, probably feeling lonely in her new life. But as time passed, the texts became less frequent. I assumed that Emma was finding her own way. I guess Emma is doing well. The lack of texts seemed to prove that Emma's days were fulfilling. And even the tea I brewed for Nathan seemed to nod in agreement. A year and a half after Emma started her job, I received a call from her. She sounded happy.
"It's been a while,"
she said.
"Mom, there's someone I want you to meet next Sunday. Do you have some time?"
"Oh, it's been a while. Yes, I do have some time on Sunday."
"Then, I'll come home on Sunday. Is noon okay?"
"Yes, that's fine. Be careful coming here."
"It's been a while since I've seen you. You'll be surprised. Bye."
After saying that, Emma hung up, and I stared silently at the screen. I wondered how long it had been since we last talked on the phone. Her unusually happy tone over the phone intrigued me, but when Sunday came, I was indeed surprised, just as Emma had said. At the door was Emma and a young man named Ryan. Ryan was not dressed casually, but in a casual suit, looking slightly nervous. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ryan, and I've been seeing Emma for a while now." Ryan, who introduced himself, was tall with features like a movie star, and came off as a very polite and good young man. "Nice to meet you. Please, come in." After inviting them into the living room and making tea, we sat at the table where Emma gave an update and introduced him. Then, Emma said shyly, "So, Mom, the reason I wanted you to meet him is because we are thinking about getting married." Married? Though I had anticipated it, the fact that Emma had found someone still surprised me internally. I kept my composure, looking at Ryan, who now had a more serious expression. "Yes. I proposed to Emma recently, and I wanted to meet you, her mom." I paused for a moment before responding, and I said, "I see. I didn't know Emma has been seeing someone as wonderful as you." "Ryan, Emma doesn't have a dad, and I raised her by myself." "Yes, Emma told me she grew up in a household without a father. Emma is my treasure, my precious daughter. Can you promise to protect her and make her happy?" "Of course. I am confident that I can make Emma happier than anyone else in this world," Ryan answered firmly, without flinching at my stern attitude. Had he hesitated, I might not have approved of their marriage. "All right. Please take good care of Emma." Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other, relieved, and smiled happily. Seeing them like this made me smile too. I think Nathan would have smiled in the same way if he were here. Months after sending off a happy Emma and Ryan, Emma took a long break and came home. She happily talked about her work and Ryan, but occasionally she looked troubled. When asked, she'd quickly change the subject, saying, "It's nothing, Mom." Whenever Emma wants to talk about something or lies, she shrugs her shoulders. This time, Emma did it again, so I was sure something had happened.
"Hey, Emma. How about we try that new place? It's a brand new cafe here."
I showed her the screen of my mobile phone. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the cafe.
I wanted to go there. The coffee is popular, everyone at work says it's good. Then it's settled."
The next day, Emma and I walked to the cafe. After ordering coffee to go, we walked for a while. "Mom, thank you for accepting my marriage with Ryan.
He seems sincere. Take good care of each other, Emma."
When we reached a large park, Emma started to talk. "Actually, I went to the in-laws' house. I feel like I'm not well liked by them." Emma's story went back a month. When she visited the in-laws' house, Henry and Lauren seemed skeptical at first glance. Nice to meet you, I'm Emma. I'm dating Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. Are you sure about her?
Lauren interrupted Emma's greeting. What do you mean?
Well, she looks rather plain, doesn't she? Her clothes, her makeup, it all screams poverty. She doesn't match you at all.
Without a word of congratulations, they blatantly insulted Emma.
Mom, that's rude. You shouldn't talk about my girlfriend like that.
Don't you think so too? Lauren sought agreement from Henry, who was sitting next to her, and Henry nodded in affirmation.
Ah. Is your family that poor? Do your parents work? My mom works, and my dad passed away when I was young. Single mother, huh? I figured as much.
Henry said with a strangely satisfied look and scoffed.
Dad? It must be for the money. We come from a respectable family. You should stay away from a woman like that. How can you say that? Emma is not like that. I know her best. Ryan just doesn't realize yet that there are many who would want to marry you for our assets.
And then, he even suggested introducing Ryan to a daughter of an acquaintance. Lauren agreed with this proposal, pleased with the idea.
That would be better. After all, we know someone respectable who works for a major company. Not a match for a single mother's family. Don't you think so, Ryan?
Seeing Lauren happily agree, Ryan raised his voice.
Enough from both of you, Dad and Mom.
The conversation went nowhere, and Ryan and Emma left the house. Ryan later told me that Henry and Lauren have a strong sense of elitism.
Emma, I'm really sorry. My parents said such awful things and hurt you.
Emma was apologized to multiple times by Ryan, who promised to always protect her. Sitting on a park bench listening to this, I had to suppress my anger from exploding.
So, what do Ryan's parents say about the marriage?
Last week, we went to their house again.
We faced some snide remarks, but Ryan convinced them, and they agreed to our marriage.
Are you okay with that, Emma? Emma bit her lip and shrugged.
Yeah, it's okay. We won't be living with them, and I can endure it.
Is that so? It was clear that the relationship between Ryan's parents and Emma was strained. Even with Ryan's protection, there would be limits. Knowing they would face hardships, I wished I could advise them to reconsider the marriage. But having already given my blessing, I couldn't say that. Even in this short time, Emma looked downcast. Thinking she might always look this way saddened me.
So, about the family meeting, I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't go.
Why?
If it's going to make you feel bad, Mom, I don't want to have the family meeting.
Emma's eyes seemed to well up, even though she didn't cry. She was considering my feelings. Touched by her kindness, I smiled.
Don't worry about me. Let's have the family meeting so that everyone can acknowledge your marriage.
Under the cold sky, Emma and I sipped our cooled coffee on our way home. When Emma told Ryan she wanted to have the family meeting, he was very surprised. And he kept worrying about her, saying,
"You don't have to push yourself. I'm fine. Mom says not to worry. If you say so, I'll talk to my parents about it."
And so, on the day, Emma and I went to the venue. Though we didn't say anything to each other, I decided to stand tall and face them with confidence. We took a cab to the hotel, and both Emma and I took a deep breath at the entrance. But Emma looked anxious. When Lauren specified this hotel, she made a snide remark.
"It's that famous hotel you see in commercials. A place your family wouldn't be familiar with."
Emma took it to heart and became completely intimidated by the unnecessary comment. I gently pulled Emma closer by the shoulder, signaling with my eyes that everything would be okay, and we started walking together. We ran into Ryan at the entrance. He seemed to have arrived earlier and was waiting for the elevator.
Thank you, Emma and Rachel, for having time today.
Ryan appeared much more nervous than the last time we met, sweating on his forehead despite it being winter.
No, thank you. We have been looking forward to today.
You might have heard from Emma, but this hotel is where my dad works. Ryan seemed uneasy and worried about his parents possibly saying something offensive, given their behavior in front of Emma. I responded confidently.
Yes, I'm aware.
No need to worry.
Ryan, you look better when you're confident.
As Ryan looked up, the elevator doors opened, and we stepped in, riding up to the higher floor. Upon entering the room, Henry and Lauren were already seated, seemingly in the middle of a conversation, smiling creepily. Noticing that 3 sets of tableware were prepared on our side, I realized it was their sly form of harassment.
"Ah, we've been waiting for you.
Please, have a seat."
"Oh, just the 2 of you? We're a single mother household,"
I replied, lifting the corners of my eyes, trying to remain calm. But Lauren let out a mocking laugh.
"That's right. Maybe you should take this in a food storage container? Since you're poor."
"Huh?
Single mothers are poor with low income, right?"
"That's right.
The income of a single mother is predictably low."
Lauren covered her mouth, trying to hold back her laughter. Despite their harsh words, I remained expressionless. Unable to stand it, Ryan cried out,
"Dad, Mom, stop it. This is too disrespectful."
At that moment, Emma tapped my shoulder. "That's awful. Mom, let's go."
"Why?"
"If having me means you suffer, Mom, I'd rather not get married." Hearing this, Ryan turned around in surprise. "Emma." While watching them, I clearly said, "It's not necessary. Just wait a moment." Then, an employee came from behind with a food storage container. "Here, please take this home," he offered to Lauren. Henry and Lauren were taken aback, stunned.
"If being poor is about low income, please, take it."
"Huh?
At least Rachel is far from poor,"
I firmly stated, and the employee, with efficient movements, placed the container down and stepped back, leaving Henry and Lauren outraged.
"Is this some kind of disrespect? That's it. You're fired. Both of you, please calm down. She's been a friend of mine since childhood. The rudeness is on your part."
The employee turned back to me, smiled briefly, and said,
"The division manager always seems so busy." "Division manager?"
Lauren and Henry gasped, tumbling out of their chairs like in a cartoon. Henry was sweating not just on his forehead but all over his face. Though it wasn't my intention to hide it, I am the daughter of the president of the group company that owns this famous hotel. I've worked for this company for many years, continuing even after getting married without resigning. When I was pregnant with Emma, I took the same maternity leave as other employees and raised Emma while working in Nathan's stead. By the time Emma entered college, my efforts were recognized, and I was promoted to division manager, unbeknownst to Henry and Lauren.
"Are both of you okay?"
I addressed Henry and Lauren with a composed voice as they lay sprawled on the floor.
"Today, we came here for the family meeting regarding the marriage of my precious daughter and Ryan. It seems you have had quite a bit to say to my daughter."
I glared at them, causing Henry and Lauren to tremble and shrink back.
"I've worked hard to provide love and education for Emma since her father, my husband, died from illness when she was young."
Ryan swallowed hard.
"I believe in Emma, and I trust the person she has chosen. Even if he comes from parents who judge people by their income and are rude, I see Ryan as a polite and respectable young man, an important new member of our family."
I paused for a moment before continuing.
I would think you feel the same about your children. So, I ask again, do you approve of my daughter's marriage to Ryan?
The room fell silent, with Henry and Lauren trembling. And Ryan looking nervous. Emma had never seen me take such a stance before.
How about it?
I pressed again, and Lauren, looking frustrated, glanced at Henry. Henry, pale-faced and flustered, hurriedly said,
Of course. Director, we hope for a closer relationship from now on. Today, I am here not as a director but as Emma's mother.
I stated firmly, looking at Henry.
And if we're talking about work, isn't it true that Henry will soon be leaving here? What do you mean?
I had investigated Henry's reputation within the company up until today. Knowing Emma's dad was Henry, I remembered his name. His condescending attitude towards Emma and his notorious behavior among hotel staff were well known. Henry was infamous for his high-handed behavior towards subordinates and was reported to be avoiding work under the guise of attending meetings. A hearing had been scheduled to address these issues.
So, that's what it is. You should reflect on your actions.
I left Henry speechless with my rebuke. Lauren stood up, face red, and lunged at me with a screech. However, I dodged, and she fell over. To the fallen Lauren, I delivered my final statement.
And know this, if you ever interfere with Emma and Ryan's happiness again, I will not remain silent.
With that, I firmly addressed the two, then led Emma and Ryan out of the room. Of course, I left the follow-up to the employee who has been a friend since childhood. Half a year has passed. The heat is relentless for someone in their 50s like me. The weather forecast predicts another scorcher today. As I walked to the supermarket, I thought back on the events. After the family meeting, Ryan apologized to Emma and me numerous times.
I'm really sorry for my parents' rude behavior.
It's okay. We've seen your sincerity.
I'm truly ashamed. I don't want to associate with parents like that anymore.
But they're the ones who raised you, right?
No, it was my uncle who raised me. My parents left me with him until I was a college student.
I had secretly wondered why Ryan's demeanor was so different from Henry and Lauren's arrogance. Understanding it was his uncle who raised him made sense. Ryan recently cut ties with Henry and Lauren after they approached him for money. Following the family meeting, Lauren called in a panic.
Ryan, your dad lost his job. He was subjected to an internal hearing for negligence, making no sense at all.
Ryan responded indifferently.
That's tough. What do you mean, acting like it's none of your business? We're struggling without money, send us some. Mom, I heard about your spending habits from my uncle. You have a problem with wastefulness. What are you talking about? Maybe if you stopped wasting money, you'd have enough to live on. Don't rely on me. Such unnecessary talk.
Then again, there were several calls, and Lauren had run through her savings due to her spending habits, even going as far as to say that Henry's retirement allowance was running out. Struggling to make ends meet, Henry and Lauren did not just ask for money but also reached out to me, wanting me to connect them over the phone. Morning, noon, or night, they didn't care when they called, which finally seemed to make Ryan explode in anger.
Dad and Mom, please, enough. I don't want to trouble Emma or Rachel either.
With that, he hung up the call and set Henry and Lauren's number to be blocked. Not stopping there, Ryan changed his mobile phone number and moved to a new apartment with Emma, changing their address. Of course, this was not communicated to Henry and Lauren, who remained unaware of Ryan and Emma's whereabouts afterward. Nothing stood in the way of their happy married life anymore. From what I've heard from Emma, they have been living peacefully since then. As for me, I've managed to maintain a good relationship with them, dining out with Emma and Ryan monthly. This incident made me realize a huge misunderstanding on my part. While I worked hard, thinking I was doing my best not to trouble Emma and raised her, I had completely stopped going on trips, which was my hobby. It seems Emma believed she was the reason I gave up my hobby, thinking my sacrifices were because of her. The efforts I made to spare Emma any hardship or worry ended up worrying her instead. From now on, don't worry about me. I want you to use your time and money for yourself. Until Emma told me this, I was enjoying living by myself at home, but afterwards, I started traveling more on weekends. As someone who loved domestic trips, I began visiting places I had wanted to go and places that held dear memories. And strangely, working hard daily made me feel it was okay to spend money and time for myself. Moreover, exploring the latest hotels started to benefit my work. Projects and such began to progress more smoothly, bringing me luck. As I thought of Emma's influence, I finished paying for my shopping and left the store. Today's shopping was for groceries to cook dinner together with the three of us. Glancing up, I saw Emma approaching from the opposite direction. "Mom, are you okay? Don't strain yourself, let me carry that for you." Emma hurried over and effortlessly took the bag from my right hand.
"Oh, thank you. Shall we go then?" "Yes. Ryan said he'd come over as soon as he's done with work. He's looking forward to your chicken dish," Emma said with a smile. "We'll need to make plenty then." Recently, we received wonderful news that Emma is pregnant. Ryan, Emma, and of course, I were all delighted. I'm planning a surprise for Emma and Ryan, looking forward to sending clothes and toys for the grandchild, though it's a secret from them. While I wonder if it's too early, I know before long, the child will be born. Though this new life has just been conceived, I'm already eagerly anticipating the day I can meet them. "Hey! Open this door. Are you out of your mind? I won't forgive you." Probably, that's what they're saying on the other side of the thick door. But I can't hear them, and frankly, I don't need their forgiveness. Facing the three flustered fools on the other side, I waved with a smile and said, "Let's go. Wonder if you can make it back safely? Good luck." My name is Leah, a 30-year-old office worker. I'm a newlywed, married for just a year, with no kids yet. When I was single, my hobby used to be taking day trips using the train on my days off. My friends would sometimes ask, "Don't you get lonely traveling alone?" But I find it surprisingly pleasant to move at my own pace without a fixed schedule, more so than traveling with others. Well, to be honest, there's a bit of loneliness, but the fun outweighs it. I have a favorite travel magazine, and sometimes I plan trips based on it. As I went about my days, I noticed something. "Huh? Isn't that the same guy I saw last week?" It seemed coincidental, but after the third time, I might have thought it was fate if I were a romantic. Instead, I just felt a bit scared. But it turned out he felt the same. Sorry if I'm mistaken, but didn't we meet last week and the week before at completely different places?" He approached me with a slightly scared look. "Wait, do you think I'm following you?" To clear up the misunderstanding, I opened my travel magazine and said confidently, "I'm just traveling based on this magazine." Surprised, he responded, "Me too," and opened the same magazine, smiling happily. That was how I met my husband, Henry. He turned out to be a really interesting guy. I, being cautious by nature, always end up carrying a lot of stuff, but he said, "I always travel light so I can move easily. Nowadays, with cashless payments, you hardly need cash. A mobile phone is enough." He laughed joyfully. Talking with someone with such different values was very stimulating. We hit it off discussing our favorite travel destinations and exchanged contacts that day. Though we both liked solo trips, we started going out together more often. Surprisingly, I enjoyed sharing memories with someone else, and I found that local food tastes even better when shared.
One day, after about 6 months, Henry asked me to go out. I didn't feel bad at all. In fact, I felt the same way. And remember being very happy. We decided to get married 6 months into our relationship. I thought our happy newlywed life was just beginning. But my expectations quickly shattered due to Henry's parents. My parents-in-law, Jack and AITA. Their house is about a 30-minute drive from ours. They are still in their 50s, with AITA working part-time, and both of them are employed. Initially, they used to visit our house, but lately, we've managed to maintain a reasonable distance. However, an incident occurred that disrupted this balance. "Hey, Henry. Let's go here on our next day off." I agreed. Sounds good. Our post-marriage tradition of mini trips to tourist spots continued. As usual, minimalist Henry recently reduced his belongings to just a mobile phone, even entrusting his wallet to me. It feels so light. "I don't look like someone who's about to go out at all, do I?" And said with a contented smile. I thought to myself, at least carry your own wallet. But it wasn't really a bother. It was an ordinary conversation, but that day was different. "Oh, by the way, Dad and Mom's wedding anniversary is coming up soon. How about we invite my parents on our next trip?" I tensed up at Henry's sudden suggestion. Of course, there was a reason for that. But I couldn't just say no, so I responded. "Yeah, that sounds good. We haven't seen AITA and Jack recently anyway." Unaware of my slightly strained face, Henry didn't notice a thing. The next day,
"They were really looking forward to it when I called,"
he told me.
"I guess I have to give it my best shot."
So, I steeled myself. Honestly, I'm not comfortable around my parents-in-law. They're not bad people, just not a good fit for me. I'm more on the reserved side, not fond of noisy places. And this applies to people too. Talking to high-energy people can be mentally exhausting for me. Speaking of my parents-in-law, they are incredibly cheerful. When I first met them, their exuberance overwhelmed me.
"Nice to meet you, I'm Henry's mom. And I'm the dad,"
they announced loudly like comedians, making me stiffen up involuntarily. That time, the 4 of us, including Henry and his parents, went out to eat, and they chose the restaurant. I wonder if it's their favorite place? I thought casually, but when we got there, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. Meeting their son's girlfriend for the first time at such a casual place made me laugh.
"We're so nervous today, we haven't eaten anything since morning,"
AITA, who didn't seem nervous at all, said cheerfully to me.
That's right. Plus, we have to get our money's worth."
The true reason for skipping breakfast was quickly revealed by Jack. Their loud voices attracted quiet laughter from nearby tables. I was embarrassed by then and wanted to go home. Looking sideways, thinking Henry must feel the same, I was surprised to find he wasn't there. He had gone to get food. Not to be outdone, the parents-in-law also got up, piling their plates with food.
Are they planning to hibernate after eating so much? Can I really become part of this family?
I managed only a forced smile at their overwhelming presence. I barely ate that day, nervous as I was. Feeling uncertain about the future with Henry, I was touched when they said at parting,
"What a wonderful girlfriend, Henry. He may be awkward, but please take care of Henry from now on, Leah."
I was simply happy to hear that. I loved him too, and I thought the parents-in-law weren't bad at heart, so when he proposed a few months later, I had no hesitation. But it seems I'm not good at judging people, as at our wedding, the bridegroom's parents, my parents-in-law, completely disregarded the ceremony and focused only on eating, leaving my parents utterly disillusioned. Henry has a brother, Jonathan, who seemed to be the only sensible one.
"I'm sorry my parents showed such an embarrassing side. It's really shameful."
He came to greet us politely, as I heard from my parents. Jonathan, who lives alone, seems to have a poor relationship with his parents. It appears the feeling is mutual, as they once complained.
"That boy is always so noisy with his complaints. Just the other day, he bragged about buying several eggs when it was limited to 1 per person, and I'd scolded him for it."
seemingly annoyed.
Don't you feel guilty about benefiting yourself at the expense of others?
That's what Jonathan apparently replied to Aaliyah. Hearing this story, I thought to myself,
isn't that a fair point? What's wrong with that, Aaliyah?
I honestly felt that way. When the parents-in-law came to visit our new home, they arrived empty-handed. That wasn't a problem, but then they started rummaging through our shelves, exclaiming,
isn't this the snack they're advertising on TV? I've been wanting to try it. Oh, and this one too.
They foraged through my hidden snacks like they were on a treasure hunt. Even though I bought those snacks, Henry, without any malice, said,
if you want them, take them home. That's fine, right, Leah?
I wanted to smack him right there and then. Sure, go ahead. All I could do was respond with a forced smile. I had a suspicion, but it was clear now. The parents-in-law were moochers.
I want this. I want that. Give me. Give me.
In the early days of our marriage, they came over every week, sensing an opportunity, and I was almost driven to neurosis.
Hey, don't you think there's something off about Aaliyah and Jack? They're kind of annoying.
My anger exploded, and I ended up fighting with Henry. Despite how angry I was, Henry looked puzzled and said,
no, not really. Is it that strange? They've been like that since I was a kid. Don't worry about it,
he said, patting my shoulder lightly, which made me furious.
Are you kidding me? If this keeps up, I'll divorce you. Just do whatever you want.
My raised voice seemed to alarm Henry, and he quickly put an end to the parents-in-law's invasions. I don't know what Henry said to them, but since then, we've been living peacefully. However, the thought of traveling with the parents-in-law naturally made me anxious. On the day of the trip, I was shocked to see them waiting.
It's been a while, Leah. I heard you've been busy with work. Must be tough.
Aaliyah spoke to me, but I was far from calm. The reason lay in the appearance of the parents-in-law.
Aaliyah and Jack, where's your luggage?
Looking closely, Aaliyah and Jack had brought nothing with them. Even for a day trip, isn't it normal to bring at least a bag?
We wanted to be ready to move quickly, and I have a sore shoulder.
Their response, echoing something I'd heard before, was baffling. The rest of the trip went as badly as I'd feared. It was soon revealed that the parents-in-law had forgotten their wallets. Feigning ignorance, they said.
That's strange, isn't it?
Watching them play dumb, I thought. Maybe it's better to just call off this trip, or even cancel it, yeah. Unfortunately, my feelings weren't understood. Henry, looking exasperated, said, again? My folks have always been like this. I'll cover for them, but make sure they pay me back. It seemed the trip would continue. As the parents-in-law laughed and apologized, all I felt was disgust. Even after we arrived at our destination, the parents-in-law's rudeness didn't stop. They complained to the store staff.
Isn't there any free tasting?
Wow, stingy, huh? When I, feeling thirsty, bought a drink and hadn't even taken a sip yet, Aaliyah said. Can I have a sip of that? I'm thirsty too. I can't believe I forgot my wallet, huh? While I forced a smile, an exasperated Henry intervened. Stop it, it's embarrassing. Look, I'll buy you one. Overhearing this, Jack muttered under his breath, referring to me. What a stingy woman, lacking compassion. I didn't miss his comment. I could say the same to you. I should have left at that point, but I was a bit stubborn. A similar incident happened twice more afterward. Apparently, the first trip was so enjoyable that Aaliyah contacted Henry for another. When I saw them on the station platform, I couldn't help but feel chills. The second time they brought their wallets. They brought their wallets this time, but when the moment came.
Oh no! This is the wallet I used before. I rushed out in such a hurry.
Their obvious lie was something only Henry would believe. And on the third trip, they forgot their wallets again. By then, it was clear, it was a deliberate act.
Aaliyah. Excuse me, But did you deliberately forget your wallet? You never intended to pay, did you?
I hit the nail on the head, and her face turned red.
Hey, what a rude woman you are. Apologize to Aaliyah.
Jack glared at me, demanding an apology.
No way. I've thought this for a long time. Both of you are just too greedy.
Caught in the argument with the parents-in-law, Henry seemed at a loss. Tourists around us watched curiously. Noticing their gaze, Henry seemed to feel ashamed and finally, "Stop it, please." He broke down crying. I was honestly disillusioned, but the parents-in-law reacted differently, rushing to a crying Henry. "I'm sorry, Henry. It was my fault. You're so kind to cry for me," Aaliyah said, with Jack quietly standing beside her. I didn't know how to react to this farce. Only one thought came to mind.
Yeah, this is impossible. Let's get a divorce.
That was all I could think. Seeing Henry's tears, the parents-in-law seemed to lose their fighting spirit. "Leah, we know we're often in the wrong. It's Henry's money, but still, we've taken advantage of him. It's Henry's money, after all." I don't know why they said it twice, but their words, dripping with sarcasm, showed no real remorse. And so, it was confirmed that they had deliberately forgotten their wallets. Aaliyah referred to it as Henry's money, but we both work, and his salary is only slightly higher than mine. Our actual incomes are not much different. Recently, every trip with the parents-in-law ended with,
"I want to buy this too. Maybe some gifts for the neighbors as well. What's that? Looks tasty. Hey, Henry. Buy that for me."
Because of their endless demands, Henry's credit card bills were shockingly high. We've been living mostly on my salary for the past few months. At the time of marriage, I considered it family money and believed in spending within the limits of our allowance for personal desires. Don't be a burden to your partner. The thing that infuriated me the most was when cashless-reliant Henry exclaimed at our travel destination.
"What? Only cash here? Hey, Leah."
He called me over and pulled his wallet out of my bag. It only had a few dollars in coins.
"No. I messed up. You know I don't carry cash, right?"
And he said without malice. It still makes me furious thinking about it. For the record, I always paid for my own things. Yet, the parents-in-law probably thought I was living off Henry's money and just complaining. We split living expenses, so such accusations were nothing but unpleasant. Thinking all this, I coldly watched Henry crying and Jack consoling him. After a moment of thought, I said, "I was wrong too. Sorry for being presumptuous. You guys go ahead on the train. I'll buy some drinks and follow." I smiled calmly, and Henry and the parents-in-law happily boarded the train. Their smiles turned to panic a few minutes later. When I didn't return, Henry must have felt something was off, as he messaged me. "Leah, are you coming? The train is about to leave." Right then, the heavy doors slowly closed. From the platform, I had a clear view of Henry's panicked face. It seemed he noticed me and was shouting something. I was replying to his earlier message.
"I'm divorcing you. If your parents are so important, live happily with them. Goodbye."
I ignored his calls, thinking,
Doesn't he care about being a nuisance on the train?
Geez. He sent several messages afterward, but I ignored them all. Henry's face through the door slowly turned to anger.
"Hey! Open this door. Are you crazy? I won't forgive you."
As if he was saying. As if I needed his permission. The parents-in-law seemed to be yelling too, but of course, I couldn't hear them. Smiling at the three fools, I said,
"Let's go. Wonder if you'll make it back safely? Good luck."
The train quietly departed, quickly disappearing from sight. That train won't stop for a while. Walking back would be quite a challenge. After watching the train leave, I hurried home to pack my bags and left. I stayed with a friend I'd been discussing divorce with. Henry's barrage of messages continued until they suddenly stopped. His phone must have died. He often forgot to charge it before bed, and it was only at 20% this morning.
Portable battery chargers are essential.
That was Henry's mantra, but his crucial portable battery charger was in my bag, along with his wallet. I left all the belongings he entrusted to me at home. He must be panicking by now, but that's not my concern. While planning my next steps with my friend, my mobile phone rang. The caller was unexpected, Jonathan, Henry's brother.
Leah, I'm sorry. Did something happen?
According to Jonathan, Henry's phone had run out of battery, and in his panic, he dropped it, shattering the screen. Unable to reach me, the desperate parents-in-law could only think of one person to call.
So, I got contacted, but all I got was ask Leah for the reason. He seemed unwilling to say more.
I told Jonathan everything about Henry and the parents-in-law without holding back. As I spoke, I could hear Jonathan's voice getting sharper over the phone. From the other end,
Leah's making a fool of us. Tell her off, Jonathan.
The in-laws were loudly insisting that Jonathan, with his way with words, would outtalk me. After I finished explaining, Jonathan snapped.
Hey! You scoundrel! Are you stupid? What? You scoundrel?
I had heard from Aaliyah that when Jonathan gets really angry, he becomes intimidating with a high-handed tone. And since Jonathan only speaks sense, Henry and the parents-in-law can't retort when he gets like that. I could hear the in-laws arguing in the background, but I quietly hung up the phone. Henry was not content with the divorce, but after I conveyed through a lawyer that I wanted to divorce without any further contact, he reluctantly agreed, accompanied by Jonathan. Later, Jonathan told me that the ex-parents-in-law had always been terrible moochers, disliked by neighbors and even school associates. When Henry returned to the ex-in-law's house, he quickly became the talk of the neighborhood, and now all three hardly ever go out. Henry's colleagues, not knowing what to say about the quick divorce, were treating him like a delicate subject.
I'm glad to cut ties with them after this incident,
Jonathan told me with a laugh. The ex-parents-in-law were known at the local supermarket for their outrageous behavior.
This is expiring soon, so give me a discount. It's a little damaged, so I'll take it for free.
Jonathan expressed his long-standing embarrassment and disdain for his parents' behavior. Recently, Henry has been seen joining them, reflecting their blood connection. It turned out the ex-parents-in-law were both gambling addicts, often skimping on food expenses, which explained their constant hunger and lack of money. When asked about the reason for my divorce, I can only say it was a difference in values. If anyone can tolerate such behavior, they must be incredibly broad-minded. It was just too much for me. I've continued working and even started a side job as a web writer after my travel blog caught a publisher's attention. I still travel, combining it with writing assignments. Solo travel seems to suit me best. Last month, I earned a decent income from writing, so I'm planning to take a vacation to a resort somewhere far for relaxation. I'm still only 30 years old, life is just beginning.
You always look beautiful. Today, too. You're nothing like my wife. I wish I could marry you soon.
It was in the middle of the night when I woke up to go to the bathroom. I heard a surprising conversation from the living room.
I'd also prefer a beautiful mom. I'd be happy that it could happen.
Apparently, my husband and son were on a video call with someone. From the conversation, it seemed likely that it was my husband's mistress, and shockingly, my son was also talking with the woman.
What in the world is going on?
After all the times they've ignored me, to do something like this. For the past month, I've been treated as if I didn't exist by the two of them. Ignored completely, even when I spoke right in front of them, and on top of that, the meals I cooked were thrown in the trash.
I felt my heart turning cold.
And so, I vowed to get my revenge.
My name is Lucy, a 39-year-old housewife. My husband Albert is a 45-year-old office worker, and our son Frederick is a 14-year-old middle school student. Our family was just an ordinary, average one, living happily together. Albert had an average income for his age and a normal look. But he was a very kind man. Our son, in the 8th grade, was in his rebellious phase, not listening to me, but I still adored him as my sweet boy. I worked hard as a housewife, doing everything all I could to support our family. However, our peaceful happiness shattered suddenly one day. It all started a month ago.
Frederick, dinner's ready.
One evening, I called out to my son, but he completely ignored me. Well, it's just a teenage behavior, I thought. At that time, I didn't care much.
I'll leave them there in plastic wrap.
I just said that and left it alone. But I noticed something was off when my husband came home.
Welcome back. Dinner's ready.
I called out my husband, but he also ignored me. Then, my son came out of his room, running up to my husband.
Dad, welcome back.
Did you buy dinner?
Yeah, your favorite burgers. Awesome. Meat's the best, right?
Then, my husband and son threw the dinner I made, with the plates, into the trash.
What the heck? What are you doing?
Ignoring me completely, they began eating the burgers from the grocery store which they had spread on the table.
Why have you been ignoring me all this time?
I asked for a reason, but both my husband and son just silently ate their burgers, as if they couldn't hear me. I felt like I had become invisible. After finishing, they returned to their rooms, leaving the mess behind. Crying, I picked up the plates from the trash can. I ended up throwing away the burger trashes they left behind. Since that day, for a whole month, I was treated as if I was non-existent. No matter what I said or did, it was as if I was invisible to them. From about a week later, I gave up and started making meals just for myself. My parents are farmers and they send fresh, delicious vegetables to our house. I used these vegetables to make meals, thinking of my family's health, but it was unbearable to see them thrown away uneaten every day. Eventually, even the meals I made for myself got thrown away by them when I wasn't looking. There was even a time when they deliberately crushed the fresh vegetables which my parents sent right in front of me.
This is kind of a stress reliever, huh? Why are you doing this? Did I do something wrong? Tell me and I'll fix it.
They continued to stomp on the vegetables, laughing mockingly, as if they couldn't see me no matter how much I cried and screamed. Then, my husband did something unbelievable. This one too, no need for it anymore, I'll throw it away. It wouldn't fetch much even if I sold it. He took off his wedding ring from his left ring finger and threw it into the trash can. It was supposed to be the symbol of our precious bond. That was the last straw for me, and I shut my heart down. I couldn't believe he would go as far as to throw away our wedding ring. What is he thinking? My sadness and anger finally reached the limit. I secluded myself in my room. From behind my room's door, I could hear my husband and son laughing together, which only deepened my sorrow. Why did things turn out this way? What happened to them? Confused and distressed, I spent a month crying alone in my room. One late night, while walking to the bathroom, I overheard a joyful conversation of my husband and my son from the living room. I felt lonely, knowing I was no longer part of their world. But then, they started a video call with someone, and the conversation that ensued was unbelievable.
Sophie, you look beautiful today, too. You're nothing like my wife. I wish I could marry you soon. Really? Ditch that wrinkled and spotted woman fast, and marry Sophie. I'd be so happy to have such a beautiful mom.
I couldn't hear the other person's voice, but my husband and son were praising someone over the phone.
Mother? What are they talking about?
It was unbelievable. From their conversation, it was clear my husband was having an affair, and my son knew and was encouraging it. Their terrible conversation continued.
Lucy really is a foolish woman, isn't she? Now that she's shut herself in her room, we don't have to see her wrinkled, spotted face, which is such a relief. Haha, it's hilarious. She really seems to know we can't see her.
They were mocking me. I felt my heart was freezing. I knew my husband was working hard but was being passed over for promotion at work. I believed my son was just being rebellious because of his age. That's why I had been patient until now.
But this was too much. What was my endurance for? Knowing the truth ignited the anger that had been smoldering inside me. I couldn't forgive this, not even because they were family. At that moment, I decided to take revenge.
For the next 2 months, I researched my husband's mistress, waiting for the right moment for revenge. Then, one day, my husband approached me. "Hey, I need to talk to you." "Oh, it's been a while since you came to talk to me. Are you done ignoring me?" "Yeah, you're of no use to me anymore." My husband handed me divorce papers with a nasty smile. And my son was grinning beside him. "I've found someone else. Leave this house." I took the divorce papers from the table with no expression.
"Fine,"
I answered. They were surprised, as if they didn't expect my agreement. "Huh? You know things very well. We could have divorced sooner then? I had a feeling it would come to this." "I already packed. I'll leave tomorrow morning." "Oh, okay. Anything else you want to say?" "What do you want me to say? Beg you not to throw me away?" "No, just sign the divorce papers." My husband seemed a bit let down, but I didn't care and signed the papers, returning them to him. They probably didn't expect that things wouldn't go so smoothly. They looked at each other, but then laughed, as if it was fine as long as I agreed to the divorce.
I wonder how long their smug smiles will last. They had no idea that hell was waiting for them after this. The only one who knew it at this point was me. I was laughing inside myself.
The next day, I packed my bags and decided to go back to my parents' house. Then, "Thank you for everything up to now. You really don't regret it? I can reconsider if you want." "Why? You're the one who wanted a divorce, right? Did you think I'd be crying and begging you to stay?"
What did you say? Dad, it's fine. We won't be troubled without a woman like her. That's true. She's a woman who no longer matters to us.
My husband seemed to have mixed feelings about me agreeing so easily to the divorce. But that was no longer of my business. The husband I loved had already changed. The husband I knew before would never have treated me like I didn't exist or laughed in such an unpleasant way. I felt the last 15 years of our marriage were in vain. Goodbye. Please take care. What happens to them after this has nothing to do with me. After all, my husband himself said that I no longer mattered to them. Upon my return to my parents' home, they welcomed me warmly. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. The vegetables you sent were either thrown away or trampled on by my husband and son, and they all went to waste. I truly felt sorry for not being able to appreciate my parents' kindness. Wasting food brings punishment. I've seen plenty of people like them suffering." My father was concerned about the scars of my heart. Feeling the warmth of my parents after a long time, I couldn't stop my tears. Meanwhile, the hell for my ex-husband and son was just beginning. Within a week of our divorce and returning to my parents' house, my ex-husband and son came rushing to our doorstep. The moment they saw my face as I opened the door, they started making a scene.
"Lucy, help us! We were deceived! That's what I told you, Dad, it was suspicious. No, you never said that. You were happy about getting a beautiful mother instead of Lucy."
Hearing their ugly quarrel, I managed to keep from laughing and responded calmly. "What? You just realized? Shouldn't it have been obvious? You're really foolish."
You knew about it? Of course. Sophie, right? There's no way a woman that beautiful would be interested in a man like you.
My ex-husband gasped in surprise. Sophie was my husband's mistress. He was quite shocked that I knew what Sophie looked like. Actually, after hearing their conversation in the living room, I sneaked out of my room while they were sleeping and checked my ex-husband's phone, which was charging in the living room. The phone was locked, probably as a precaution, but I knew he used his birthday as the password, so it was easy to open. I was astounded by his lack of security awareness and how he underestimated me, thinking I wouldn't know his birthday. Well, anyways, I opened his text messages and found a lot of exchanges between him and Sophie, like a couple in love. Just thinking about it now makes me nauseous. But Sophie's profile picture was too beautiful to be true. She has exotic features on her face, so beautiful that she could be an idol or a celebrity. No, it was definitely suspicious. There was no reason for such a beautiful woman to be attracted to an average man like him. So, I did an image search with Sophie's photo. Nowadays, you can search the internet using photos, not just keywords. That's when a shocking truth came to light.
That's Sophie, she's actually a middle-aged man, just like you.
There was a warning posted on the internet about a marriage scam artist. Just to be sure, I asked a police officer friend from my school days, and it turned out to be true. Even a famous manga artist got caught in this kind of scam and lost $750,000.
No way! I did a video call with her. It was definitely that beautiful woman.
My husband was desperately trying to deny it, seemingly unwilling to believe. My son, too, was dumbfounded, thinking it couldn't be a scam.
But suddenly, we couldn't get in touch anymore just as we were about to get married. She ran off with our money. Oh, you donated quite a lot, didn't you? I believed that beautiful woman was going to be my mom. We even talked through video calls. But nowadays, you know, even in video calls, with software, a man can pretend to be a woman. Did you know?
These days, gender transformation tools can change one's gender and appearance in calls, making them look like a completely different person. The voice can be easily altered from male to female, and the facial expressions change during the conversation, so it's hard to tell it's fake. It's truly a terrifying era.
No way! My Sophie is a middle-aged man? When I saw Sophie's real face on the internet, I laughed so hard at the difference. Horrible, Mom! You knew and still abandoned us? I lost my savings too!
Horrible? Have you already forgotten what you have done to me? Listening to them act as if they were the victims, all I could do was shaking my head. Ignoring me as if I didn't exist, not responding when I spoke to you, throwing away the meals I made. At the end, you chose to divorce. You were the ones who went away first. Never call me Mom again. What? You're still mad? I'm sorry, let's make up. We're family, right? We're strangers now. So I don't care. This is the end you chose. Take responsibility for your own choices. When I rejected them, my son begged even more. Don't say that. I'm your son, right? Help me, at least.
What? That's not fair, Frederick. Trying to save yourself? It's Dad's fault for being tricked in the first place. There's a good investment. We'll share the profits. How could you not suspect that? You were happy to become rich and handed over all your savings too.
I was tired of hearing their endless and unpleasant bickering. Our family was destroyed by a single scam artist. If my ex-husband hadn't cheated, maybe we would still be a happy family now. But it's too late.
It's a waste of time. Can you leave?
As I tried to close the front door, my ex-husband begged me.
Wait! Please, let's start over. Your parents are farmers, right? So even if we have no money, we won't starve.
Are you saying you want to reconcile with me for food?
No, it's not like that. I need you. I know it's too late, but forgive me. I won't do it again.
His obvious excuses only made me sigh. Such men will surely repeat the same mistakes. I decided to put an end to it. Wasting food brings punishment. I've seen many like you suffering. What are you talking about all of a sudden?
It's my parents' teaching. You threw away the vegetables they lovingly grew without even eating them. Understand? I'm angry. I will never forgive you. Don't ever show your face to me again.
With that, I closed the door.
Wait! Mom, forgive me!
They kept making a scene at the front door, causing a neighborhood disturbance, so I called the police to take them away. Later, I heard that my ex-husband lost all his money and was fired for embezzling company funds. My son dropped out of high school and is working, but he can't find a good job. The marriage scam artist was recently arrested, according to the news. He was a middle-aged man, nothing like the beautiful woman, and many men were deceived on social media. As for me, I'm helping out on my parents' farm, living a stress-free and healthy life. I'm soon going to be introduced to a man of my age who's also a farmer in the same area. Next time, I want to build a happy family.